Chapter 166. Qi Yu followed Zhang Juxiao to the side of the banquet hall and went to the balcony outside. Although it was summer, the weather today was not very hot. Moreover, it was night time, so a light breeze blew over. It felt much better than the cold air conditioning in the banquet hall. Taking in a deep breath of the air that was far more turbid than it had been during the era of the ancient beasts, Qi Yu leaned on the railing and looked outside. From the balcony, he could clearly see the wide streets outside. Gorgeous lights filled the city, rendering the night that was not so quiet. He was back. He was finally back. When Qi Yu saw Ru Yue, Ming Ming, and his group of brothers, his heart was filled with excitement. However, when he really came back, he realized that he actually had a deep nostalgia for the ancient beasts. Thinking back to his magical experiences in the past 6 months, his gaze became much gentler. He knew that he was now the true king of warriors who was willing to protect the god of life and death. He could finally be considered to have the power to protect the East. Mr. Qi, I'm really sorry for calling you out. Compared to Qi Yu's straightforward character, Zhang Jiuxiao's appearance was much more outstanding. He had an elegant temperament and a handsome face. He was obviously the type of man many women would dream of. At least, he could be considered a prince charming. Director Zhang, you don't have to be so polite. You are Ru Yue's brother, so just call me by my name. Qi Yu replied with a smile. Zhang Juxiao smiled indifferently and said, Then I won't stand on ceremony. Qi Yu, we have only met a few times, but you have left a very deep impression on me. Of course, this impression is not because of you, but because of the changes that you have brought to Ru Yue. Frankly speaking, it is really hard for me to believe that Ru Yue has changed so much in just a year. However, I can be sure that the changes that have happened to her are definitely related to you. Oh, can you be more specific, Director Zhang? I don't think Ru Yue has changed much. Only her temper has improved a great deal. Zhang Qiuxiao sighed and said, This sister of mine has been very competitive since she was young. He was even more competitive than many boys, regardless of when he was young. It was after he joined the Dragon Realm group. Everything she had done was outstanding. Otherwise, our parents wouldn't have let her manage the Longyu group. Ru Yue was a typical strong woman. Even I, as her brother, can't help but admire her ice-cold temperament and resolute way of doing things. However, since about 5 or 6 years ago, I have been a little worried about her. If nothing else, just the matter of her marriage was a big headache for me and our parents. Ru Yue's standards were too high, and she was too arrogant and outstanding. It was really difficult for me to find someone who could match her. As long as she was in the company, she would even forget my identity as her brother and work hard every day. With her continuous efforts, in just a few years, the Longyu group has undergone earth-shaking changes, and the scale of the group has nearly doubled. Although my work was also very busy, Ru Yue had to do a lot more than me in the past. There was a time when the company was at its most critical point. She even didn't sleep for 7 days and 7 nights in a row. She persisted through the bottleneck and made the Longyu group reach a new level. Qi Yu's eyes revealed a focused gaze. Hearing about Ru Yue from another person, he couldn't help but feel a little strange in his heart. Although he and Ru Yue had developed to the most intimate relationship between a man and a woman, after all, they had not known each other for a long time. They were mostly at the level of the guardian warriors. He didn't know much about the Ru Yue in the words of the living. Zhang Xinxiao paused for a moment and continued. However, since you appeared a few months ago, I found that my sister suddenly changed. She was always energetic in the past, but she would actually become absent-minded more than once. Sometimes, even in the meeting, she would be absent-minded. She still handled her work well, but from her eyes, I saw many places that were different from before. From then on, she really became like a girl. She also paid attention to dressing up and began to show a gentle smile. Seeing her like this, I was really happy. Qi Yu, I must thank you for this. The gaze in Qi Yu's eyes suddenly changed. From Zhang Xinxiao's words, He had already heard something. Brother Zhang, you can go straight to the topic. I think the auction is about to start. Zhang Xinxiao's eyes flashed, and he said, Do you remember the time when you threatened me? At that time, I was really shocked. It was also from then on that I discovered that you were extraordinary. However, Chiyu, what I want to tell you is that I only have one sister. I don't want any harm to come to her. Chiyu nodded his head and replied, This is human nature. If I had a younger sister, I would definitely think the same way. Zhang Xinxiao smiled and said, In that case, I want to know, what is Mr. Qi's occupation? From what you have just done at the auction, I am afraid that your assets are not much less than our Longyu group. If you become my brother-in-law in the future, I really want to know something about you. I don't know if you can satisfy my curiosity. Looking at Zhang Xinxiao, Qiyu suddenly felt uncomfortable. It was not because of Zhang Xinxiao, but because of himself. Yes, as a brother, if he suddenly saw his sister being so intimate with a man she didn't know, he would probably be suspicious. Indeed, apart from his identity as a guardian warrior, he was not worthy of Ryue in any way. The money used for the auction just now was borrowed from Ryue by him. Perhaps Ryue wouldn't feel anything, but as her relatives, or as the shareholders of the Longyu Group, what would they think? He was indeed too impulsive. Although thinking so in his heart, Qiyu did not regret what he did today. Brother Zhang, I think with the strength of the Longyu Group, it is really easy for them to investigate such a small figure like me. My background is also very simple and there is nothing to hide. I am an orphan. I grew up in an orphanage. When I was 14 years old, before I graduated from junior high school, I walked into society for various reasons. You can think of me as a gangster. I lived like this until last winter. Later, I met Ryue. With the help of Ryue, I entered Qingbei University to study. However, I dropped out of school for some reasons. I have no money and I don't have any job. Now, I am simply an unemployed person. I know you're guessing where my money came from. Yes, you guessed right. The expenses needed for the auction were all lent to me by Ryue. After listening to Qiyu's unreserved confession, Zhang Xinxiao was stunned. Although he also guessed that Qiyu did not have much ability, he did not expect him to be like this. An orphan, a semi-illiterate who hadn't graduated from junior high school, a ruffian and an unemployed person. All of these reflected the identity of Qiyu at the bottom of society. Whether compared with him or Ryue, there was too much difference. Mr. Qi, I hope you understand that I am not joking with you. Can you be a little more serious? Subconsciously, Zhang Xinxiao still felt that Qiyu was not ordinary. Therefore, he found it hard to believe everything Qiyu said. Qiyu smiled indifferently and said, Brother Zhang, I said that there is nothing to hide about my identity. You can easily find out all my information. I can only tell you that everything I said is the truth. As for whether you believe it or not, that is your problem. As you said, the money you used at the auction was all from the Longyu Group. You just said that you borrowed it from Ryue. I want to know why. Zhang Xinxiao felt that something was wrong. Qiyu was not joking. His expression was very serious, and his eyes looking at him were very clear. Qiyu sighed softly. I am an orphan. If there was no rescue organization established by the country, perhaps I would not exist in this world. Therefore, I hope to contribute to the country. I just want to support the country's charity. As for why I did it, I can't explain it now. Zhang Xinxiao's voice rose a little, and his face became a lot colder. So, everything you did before was just to offer Buddha with borrowed flowers? Qiyu said indifferently, If you want to understand it that way, there is nothing wrong with it. Zhang Xinxiao said, slightly angrily, But do you know that everything you did just now has caused great damage to our Longyu Group? Not only the money you spent, but also the limelight at the auction. You have made our Longyu Group different in the eyes of these female entrepreneurs. You snatched the auction items from everyone's hands without any scruples. and you even offered an unreasonable high price. What will others think of you? What's more, you spent 20 million yuan, not 2,000 yuan. Do you know how difficult it is to earn 20 million yuan? Do you know how many days and nights Ruyue has to work hard to do that? Looking at Zhang Xinxiao deeply, Qiyu's somewhat strange eyes suddenly became a lot more determined. I said that I borrowed the money from Ruyue. Since I borrowed it, I will definitely return it, and I will bring enough interest to Longyu Group. Perhaps, from a business point of view, this is very unreasonable. But I hope that Brother Zhang can give me a chance like Ruyue. Zhang Xinxiao frowned and said, "Give you a chance? Then, tell me, what will you use to repay this debt?" Qiyu said, "I can't say for now, but I can guarantee that within a year, the 200 million yuan I borrowed from Ruyue will be returned to Longyu Group with interest." Zhang Xinxiao said in surprise, "What? You borrowed 200 million yuan from Ruyue?" Qiyu smiled indifferently and said, "Yes, 200 million yuan. For a ruffian like me, it is definitely an astronomical figure of 200 million yuan." At this time, Zhang Xinxiao could not calm down at all. The anger that he had been suppressing finally burst out. However, just as he was about to get angry, Qiyu suddenly stepped forward and came to his side. Before he could react, Qiyu's hand had already pressed on his shoulder. Zhang Xinxiao only felt that his body suddenly became numb, and he couldn't even make a sound. Looking at Qiyu, his angry eyes couldn't help but be a little shocked. It was just a simple physical contact, and it was even with the clothes between them. With his knowledge, he couldn't understand what was going on at all. "I'm sorry, Brother Zhang. I know that what I did today is very difficult for you to accept. I also understand that, as a man, if you want to be recognized by others, you have to be successful. I just hope that you can give me this opportunity. Just wait and see. Within a year, I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Just now, you asked me why I borrowed 200 million yuan. I've already thought it through. If I don't fulfill my promise within a year, then I will only have one compensation, and that is my life." Qiyu's tone was extremely firm. Looking into his eyes, Zhang Xinxiao suddenly felt his brain sink into a daze. That seemingly solid gaze seemed to directly pierce into the deepest part of his heart. A faint divine light flickered, and from Qiyu's eyes, he saw many things that he had never felt before. In that instant, Qiyu had already deeply imprinted some memories into his brain through his own spiritual fluctuations, and these memories would gradually appear in Zhang Xinxiao's dreams from now on. After all, this was the brother of his beloved. Qiyu knew that there were some things that he should let Zhang Xinxiao know. Qiyu returned to the banquet hall, while Zhang Xinxiao was still standing on the balcony. However, he was now facing the banquet hall, leaning against the balcony door, and his eyes happened to be looking at the position of the rostrum. His body was still completely paralyzed, and he couldn't move at all. But his posture was adjusted by Qiyu very naturally, and from the outside, there was no flaw. At this time, the auction had already started again. Because of the conversation with Zhang Xinxiao just now, an auction item had already been sold. Qiyu returned to Ruyue's side. Ruyue looked at him, and then looked at Zhang Xinxiao on the balcony, and couldn't help but reveal a questioning gaze. Qiyu smiled slightly and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, your brother just told me to treat you better in the future. He said that the air on the balcony is better, and it's more comfortable than the air conditioning here, so he watched the auction from there." Naturally, Ruyue believed Qiyu's words without a doubt. She had already returned her gaze to the rostrum. Zhang Xinxiao's words were not completely useless to Qiyu. At this time, he had calmed down from the impulse at the beginning of the auction. Looking at the auction on the stage, Qiyu didn't bid again. Indeed, in such an auction, if Longyu Group continued to be high-profile, it would indeed be detrimental to its future development. For Ruyue's sake, Qiyu decided to give up. He quietly watched the remaining auction items being sold one by one, but he didn't bid again. With Chi Yu's giving up halfway, the auction showed a situation where hundreds of people contended. The last one-third of the auction items were indeed much more precious than the first ones. Although Chi Yu didn't participate in the auction, the final price of each auction item was much higher than the starting price because of the enthusiastic atmosphere of the auction before. The woman, surnamed Wang, won several good auction items in succession, just like when Chi Yu provoked her before. Every time she succeeded, she would cast a complacent look in Chi Yu's direction. The auction items were reduced one by one, and the auction was coming to an end. After getting another auction item, the woman, surnamed Wang, walked in the direction of Chi Yu and Ryue with some satisfaction. Ryue's expression didn't change, as if she didn't see this person at all. Chi Yu's expression was even calmer. In his eyes, the woman was just a clown. What? Did he give up halfway? Or are you not firm enough? The woman, surnamed Wang, walked to Chi Yu and Ryue and stood beside them. Although her eyes were in the direction of the rostrum, she lowered her voice and provoked Chi Yu viciously. Chi Yu smiled. Would he be afraid of such a vulgar topic? Not firm enough? Have you seen it before? No, of course you haven't. I'm afraid you won't have such a chance in your life. Because, Auntie, you really don't suit my taste. How about I give you a name like the Sun Nation? What should I call you? Let's call you Sagging Milk Bag. What do you think? He was as calm and collected as the woman, surnamed Wang. He also lowered his voice, but his words were much more vicious. You. Under Chi Yu's provocation, the woman, surnamed Wang, couldn't help but raise her voice. It immediately attracted the attention of the people around. There was a hint of light in her eyes. Chi Yu pressed his index finger to his lips. Show manners, President Wang. You have to pay attention to your manners. The woman, surnamed Wang's face had become extremely ugly. If it weren't for the powder on her face to cover it, who knew what the color would have been like? The clear voice of the MC on the rostrum was still the same as at the beginning. Well, that's all for today. Our auction is about to end. We will immediately begin the auction of today's last auction item, which is the special ring donated by Mr. Chi of the Longyu Group. As she spoke, an etiquette lady walked up with a tray in her hands. Under the contrast of the red flannelette on the tray, the exquisite wooden box that Chi Yu had handed to the MC earlier was impressively on the tray. The base price is 50 million. The MC couldn't help but feel a little guilty when he said this number. After all, the prices of all the items sold today were not even this number. The woman, surnamed Wang, seized the opportunity and said disdainfully, You casually took out a box and said it's worth 50 million? What do you think we are? Even if this is a charity gala, you don't have to deceive everyone like this. Her words still had a certain effect. All kinds of doubtful eyes were focused on the direction of Chi Yu. Chi Yu walked slowly to the rostrum as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. He smiled and said, I also understand that it's hard for all of you to believe that this small ring has such a high value. However, I can tell you that the value of this ring is far above the base price I quoted, because it's unique. As he spoke, Chi Yu had already stepped onto the rostrum. The distance between the rostrum and the ground was 1 meter. He indeed stepped onto the rostrum. His movements were very elegant and natural, and it didn't make anyone feel abrupt. When someone was surprised by his movements just now, he had already come to the MC's side and took the exquisite wooden box into his hand. Sweeping his gaze across the audience, Chi Yu smiled indifferently and said, Since everyone has doubts, then let me show it in front of everyone. I think you can fully understand everything I'm saying just by looking at it. As he spoke, he held the wooden box in his palm with one hand and slowly opened the exquisite lid of the wooden box with the other. Chi Yu's movements were very slow. At this time, everyone's eyes were completely focused on his palm. After all, everyone wanted to know what kind of treasure this ring that he said was worth 50 million. 50 million! That was already a very large number. The edge of the wooden box opened a gap. Just as everyone was looking forward to it, the MC's body suddenly trembled slightly. Her eyes instantly became a little dull. This was because she could clearly feel a cold current coming from the ring in an instant. That cold feeling couldn't help but make her body tremble a little. A faint layer of white mist that was visible to the naked eye drifted out from the wooden box. Everything that the MC felt was soon clearly felt by the other guests. That cold air brought a refreshing feeling to everyone in this hot summer. As the box gradually opened, the cold air also became more and more intense. The temperature of the entire banquet hall, which was thousands of square meters, was constantly falling under the influence of this faint layer of white mist. The thermometer on the wall had already dropped from 25 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius. Moreover, it was still falling. Chi Yu's gaze was a little frozen. Looking at the wooden box in his hand, the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a gentle smile. The change in temperature and the white mist made the attention of all the guests more focused. At this time, the wooden box finally completely opened under the last movement of Chi Yu's fingers. Suddenly, a white mist was emitted, and the cold air caused the needle of the thermometer to stop at the position of 15 degrees Celsius. In a short period of less than a minute, it could actually reduce the temperature of such a wide space by more than 10 degrees. What was this thing? The white mist gradually dispersed around. As the temperature dropped, it had gradually disappeared. After the white mist, the mysterious veil of the ring in the wooden box was finally lifted and presented in front of everyone. Blue. First of all, everyone saw blue. At this moment, the blue that appeared in front of their eyes, it had been deeply imprinted in the deepest part of their memories. At that time, it was crystal clear that could not be described in words. Pure blue, sparkling with a celestial luster, a faint blue light. Accompanied by the chilly airflow, it brought a strong sense of shock to everyone. Blue was the main body of the ring. It looked very slender and was obviously a lady's ring. Even the purest crystal could not compare to its crystal luster. On the simple blue ring, there was no overly gorgeous pattern. There was also no diamond that women loved the most. It was just a simple plain ring, but it left the deepest impression on everyone. Chi Yu took the blue ring out of the wooden box. Everyone was surprised to see that the ring actually emitted a faint layer of blue light. Although it was not strong, the light was obviously there. As it left the box, the chilly air flow became even more obvious. The blue ring seemed to be transparent, but there seemed to be a layer of white air flow roaming within the main body of the ring. A light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes, and the lights in the hall went out at the same time. However, the extinguishment of the lights did not cause panic among the guests. This was because in the suddenly dark banquet hall, the incomparably cold blue light in Chi Yu's hand became clearer. It was like a bright moon high up in the sky, held in Chi Yu's hand. The blue light was clearly visible to everyone. It is not a diamond, but it is a crystal of ice. In this world, I can guarantee that besides me, no one else can take out such a ring. Simply put, it is carved out of jade. It is the soul of the 10,000 years cold jade. Perhaps everyone will doubt my words, but I think the aura it emitted is enough to prove everything. Yes, the material of the ring in Chi Yu's hand came from the 10,000 years cold jade. After being carved by Xuanyuan's soul, it was only a small part of the soul of the 10,000 years cold jade. Under Chi Yu's suggestion, Xuanyuan's soul used the sharpness of Xuanyuan's sword to carve it into the shape of a ring in Chi Yu's body. There were no markings, because there was no need for it. The world's most dazzling blue color had already become its most dazzling color, and there was no need for any embellishments. The lights came back on, and the darkness seemed to have been specially prepared for the 10,000 years cold jade ring. All right, I think we can start the auction now. Chi Yu placed the 10,000 years cold jade ring back into the wooden box. At the moment, apart from the god weapon and the Qilin octatic treasures, this could be considered the most precious treasure he had. It was exactly because of this that he had taken it out as the auction item for this charity auction. Of course, he had his own reasons for doing this. The MC didn't even know when Chiyu came down from the podium. Her gaze was completely fixed on the 10,000 years cold jade ring in the wooden box. There was no woman who didn't like jewelry, especially this kind of unique and special jewelry. The MC was the closest to the ring, so she could feel the cold air clearly. If she could bring it along in the summer, it would be like a mobile air conditioner. Just this point alone made its value immeasurable, especially since it was completely natural. 10,000 years cold jade. This term only appeared in novels, but after Chiyu's demonstration, the guests present saw the shocking blue color with their own eyes, and they no longer had any doubts. This is incredible. The MC murmured, I've been in the auction industry for close to 10 years, but even overseas, I've never seen such an outstanding gem. Oh no, such a unique treasure. Diamonds are precious, but compared to the 10,000 years cold jade, it pales in comparison. As a woman, I really want it for myself. I now completely believe that its starting price of 50 million is worth it, even though it's just a ring. Dear distinguished guests, I think we can start the last auction of the day. Everyone, please bid. Silence. The whole place fell into complete silence. However, the eyes of every woman present, including Hairua, couldn't help but shine like stars. A precious sword matched a chivalrous knight, and such a superb accessory was naturally a woman's favorite. From the moment the 10,000 years cold jade ring appeared, it had completely attracted everyone's attention. The woman, surnamed Wang, seemed to have forgotten her resentment towards Chiyu. She slowly raised the sign in her hand and solemnly said, Mr. Chiyu, if I've been rude to you and the Longyu group, please forgive me. To be able to take out such a precious treasure for charity auction, I think your actions are enough to earn everyone's heartfelt respect, including mine. It's simply too beautiful. I think, as its previous owner, you must have given it a name. Chiyu was slightly stunned, but he quickly returned to normal. The woman, surnamed Wang, didn't seem so annoying anymore. Of course, it's unique, so it naturally has its own name. I'll call it the Ancient Heart to prove its age. After more than 10,000 years of accumulation, this 10,000 years cold jade soul essence was formed. It's perfect, at least in my heart. Chapter 167. Although the ring was dazzling, its price was indeed too high. Lady Wang's bid immediately caused an uproar. It should be known that apart from competing with the Longyu Group in certain industries, Han Yuan Group's main business was jewelry. This could be easily seen from the special diamond necklace around Lady Wang's neck, which was made up of blue diamonds. As a member of the jewelry industry, she had actually stood up to bid without hesitation. It was obvious that this Ancient Heart cold jade soul essence ring was indeed worth that much. Some of the shrewd, strong women immediately reacted after hearing Lady Wang's words. Before the MC could call out 50 million going once, they immediately raised the paddles in their hands. Ryua's eyes were a little hazy as she looked at the ring on the stage. She didn't know why, but her heart was filled with a sense of loss. She felt that it was a great pity that the ring was so precious, but at the same time, she felt lost because of what the ring represented. Under the dumbfounded gaze of the MC, the price continued to rise. In just a short while, the price of the Ancient Heart had already exceeded 65 million renminbi, even though the MC had forgotten to mention the amount of the price increase each time. The name Ancient Heart was an idea that Chiyu had come up with on the spur of the moment. Not only was the 10,000-year cold jade formed over a long period of time, but it was also to commemorate everything that had happened to him during the era of the ancient beasts. Lady Wang's expression became very solemn. Her eyes became very clear and abnormally bright. As someone from a jewelry family, she knew very well that the Ancient Heart on the stage was definitely a priceless treasure. Although it hadn't been specially appraised, the aura emitted by the Ancient Heart was enough for her to understand everything. It was an incomparably sparkling blue color, as well as its ability to change temperature. This was definitely not something that could be created by any special technique. Even if one used dry ice to lower the temperature of such a large space, it would still take time. However, all of this had been completed in just a few blinks of an eye. 70 million. Lady Wang gritted her teeth and called out the price. This was close to the limit that she could bear. The audience gradually quietened down, although the women present were all elites in the business world. As a business, their cash flow was limited. And they were not rich playboys. Most of them accumulated wealth through their own hard work. 70 million to buy a ring was already somewhat inconceivable for them. After seeing the ancient heart, these business elites had gradually calmed down, and the sound of bidding also came to a halt. 71 million. Finally, someone spoke, and the person who spoke turned out to be the beautiful woman Chi-Yu met when he first entered the banquet, Ryue's future sister-in-law. A trace of disappointment appeared in the eyes of the woman, surnamed Wang. She sighed and said, "To be honest, I really hope to obtain this ring. If the conditions allow it, I will definitely offer a higher price. But recently, our Hung Yuan group has been dealing with some matters regarding the listing of the company, and the company's mid-year financial report is about to be released. Under these circumstances, 70 million is already the limit of what I can afford. It seems that I have no choice but to give up." As she spoke, she lowered her head dejectedly. Just when everyone thought that 71 million was going to be the highest price of the day, a calm voice suddenly sounded. "I bid 80 million. The audience went into an uproar once again, and all eyes turned towards the direction of the voice. The voice had come from the back of the rostrum. It sounded as moving as an aureole leaving the valley. It didn't have any charm, but it made everyone feel very comfortable when they heard it. The clear and melodious voice also had a hint of mellowness to it. The perfect voice caused everyone to gasp in surprise. A graceful figure slowly walked out from the back of the rostrum. It was a woman. To be precise, it should be a woman. She looked to be less than 20 years old. Her long black hair draped over her back. Her hair was very straight and soft, and under the illumination of the banquet hall, it shone with a mysterious luster. Her long, soft, and straight hair extended all the way to the ground, like black satin, giving off an extremely soft feeling. She was a round one, 7 meters tall, and her well-proportioned figure couldn't be considered voluptuous, but it was incomparably attractive. At the first sight of her, Chi-Yu suddenly felt the same feeling he had when he first saw Ryue and Wenting. It was completely close to perfection. Perhaps only the successor of the goddess Athena, Yamu, could barely surpass her in terms of temperament. Incomparably exquisite facial features, tender skin, a pair of large eyes that shone with a gentle light, coupled with her long hair that reached the ground and her slender body. Every part of her was so attractive. She was wearing a simple black evening gown, and there was nothing special about it. She was conservative, like Ryue, and only a third of her upper arms were exposed. Her snow-white skin was full of a warm, jade-like texture. That delicate and alluring feeling was as if water would drip out of it with a gentle pinch. His big black eyes seemed to be able to speak. His gentle gaze swept across everyone present. Slightly nodding, he said, "I am very presumptuous to disturb everyone. Xiao Lu is very sorry. Please forgive me." The eyes of all the men present lit up, and all the women could not help but be overshadowed by her, except for Ryue. Only Ryue's coldness and stunning beauty could be compared with this beauty who suddenly appeared. Xiao Lu turned to the chairman of the National Women's Federation on the stage, smiled slightly, and apologized. "I'm sorry, Chairman Li. Please forgive my presumptuousness. However, this last auction item really forced me to come out from the backstage." Chairman Li stood up and said with a smile, "Xiao Lu, you are also a successful representative of women. It doesn't matter. You should have come to this banquet." After a short moment of amazement, Chi-Yu had recovered at this time. He was a little surprised to find that the guests in the banquet hall seemed to be very familiar with the long-haired girl who suddenly appeared. He was not surprised to see the infatuation in the men's eyes, but what surprised him was that even the female entrepreneurs present were looking at Miss Xiao Lu with eyes full of admiration, and there was no jealousy that women should have. "Ruyue, who is this Xiao Lu? It seems that everyone knows her." Qi Yu asked Ruyue through telepathy. Ruyue said in a low voice, "Don't you know? Oh my God! Are you a modern person or not?" Qi Yu smiled faintly and said, "Even I don't know how to explain it. Don't forget that I just came back from the ancient beasts era." Ruyue glanced at him and saw that Qi Yu did not focus his attention on the stunning Xiao Lu. She could not help but feel a little happy in her heart. In fact, although Qi Yu liked beautiful women, he had also seen many top-grade beauties. He also had 3 top-grade confidants. Although this Xiao Lu was enough to shock him, it was not to the extent of infatuation. Moreover, before coming back, he had already decided to cultivate his character and not to easily get involved in emotional troubles. Speaking of which, the rise of Xiao Lu is about the same time as when you became the Zodiac guardian god warrior. Just last winter, she suddenly appeared on the stage of the entertainment industry like a meteor. In just a short period of 3 months, she actually moved everyone's heart with her moving voice. She became the leader of the new generation of our Yanhuang Republic's music industry. I have heard her songs. It is really like the sound of nature. Qi Yu suddenly understood and said, "So she is a big star. No wonder everyone seems to know her. But she has only been in the industry for a little more than a year. How can she have so much money? She can only buy a ring with 80 million yuan." Ruyue smiled slightly and said, "Haven't you heard? The power of the masses is great." Ever since her debut, she had only released 1 album. It was a compilation of 14 singles. Each song had a different characteristic, perfectly displaying her heavenly voice. The sales of this album alone has reached an astonishing 4 million copies, and this is only within our Yanhuang Republic. This album of hers has now entered the global market. It is not difficult for her to take out 80 million yuan. Xiao Lu is a very strange star. She is different from other stars. She never seems to care about money. She sings for the sake of singing. It can be said that she is the dream lover in the hearts of all men, and also the angel in their hearts that they need to protect. I think as long as it is a man. After hearing her voice, I am afraid that no one will have the intention to hurt her, not even a little bit. Only those who have really heard her voice can understand that feeling. Moreover, although she is beautiful, she does not cause jealousy. That is because she is low-key. With her achievements in the recording industry, she can have greater development. However, she did not. Unlike other stars, she did not change from singing to acting. She did not even do any advertising. She only released that album. All her public performances only appeared in charity events, and she did not charge any fees. Such a singer is completely recognized by us women. The so-called unspoken rules of the entertainment industry are even more isolated from her. Even if countless reporters follow her for 24 hours, they will not be able to dig out any gossip from her. Such a girl, I can only use the word perfect to describe her. I did not expect that she will also come to tonight's party. With her low-key manner, she should be preparing to sing a single after the auction. After listening to Ryue's simple introduction, Qi Yu suddenly had a great interest in this gentle and beautiful girl. Is it not for money? Did she enter the entertainment industry just to sing? Did she want to contribute her beautiful voice to everyone? 80 million going once, Ms. Xiao Lu's price. After a short period of surprise, the MC has re-entered his role after getting the signal of the Women's Federation's president. Xiao Lu stood under the stage, smiling and nodding to the people under the stage. When her moonlight shifted to Qi Yu, she could not help but stay for a while, just in time to meet Qi Yu's eyes. Qi Yu was a little surprised to find that this girl named Xiao Lu did not have any jewelry on her body, not even a decorative necklace. Everything was so natural, giving him the feeling of breathing the clear air when he first arrived at the ancient behemoth era. 80 million going twice. The MC has already raised the auction hammer in her hand. If no one else bids, when she calls out for the third time, the ancient heart will be sold. Is there anyone else who wants to make a bid? If there isn't, then the ancient heart cold jade soul ring will belong to Miss Xiao Lu, the master of ceremonies routinely asked. Xiao Lu's gaze had already left Qiyu and landed on the ancient heart. There was no excitement or joy in her eyes, only anticipation. 100 million. The two short words represented an astronomical number. These two simple words were filled with determination. 80 million going thrice. 100 million? The MC almost dropped the auction hammer in her hand. There was a look of disbelief in her eyes. At this moment, a man has once again become the focus of the audience. He is still Qiyu. Qiyu calmly said the two words, 100 million. He slowly walked past Ruyu and towards the main platform for the third time today. His gaze was calm, but it was also filled with determination. Xiao Lu quickly turned around. Her beautiful long hair was like a black waterfall in the air, and her beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. 100 million? Mr. Qi, this seems to be the auction item that you donated. Qi walked to Xiao Lu's side and faced her face. He smiled and said, Yes, this is indeed the auction item that I donated. However, I did not say that I would let it go. I am offering 100 million to buy it back. I am completely representing the Longyu Group. In addition to the previous auction items, I only hope to make some effort for charity today. Xiao Lu frowned slightly, and there was a look of disappointment in her eyes. Just as 70 million was Ms. Wang's bottom line, 80 million was also her bottom line. She looked at Qiyu softly and said, Sir, can't you give it to me? Perhaps if someone else was looked at by such a beauty with such a gentle look, they would immediately raise their hands and surrender. Unfortunately, she was facing Qiyu. Qiyu shook his head and said with a smile, I'm sorry, Miss Xiao Lu. It's not that I don't want to give it to you, but I really can't because I have already found a master for it. Of course, Miss Xiao Lu's temperament is enough to match it, but I have already determined its master when I prepared it. Xiao Lu took a deep look at Qiyu, and there was no unhappiness in her beautiful eyes. She smiled and said, Mr. Qi, you donated such a precious auction item and bought it back in person, which shows your support for charity. I can only give it up. After Qiyu nodded to her, he looked at the rostrum. The MC immediately understood. After the first, second, and third confirmation, he bought the auction item that he provided with a sky-high price of 100 million. The reason why he did not compete for the other auction items in the second half of the auction was that he already had a plan in mind. The last auction was his real purpose. In this way, it was equivalent to donating 100 million to the All China Women's Federation for free. Even the world's famous rich people could not easily make such a big donation. Walking on the rostrum, this time, Qiyu was greeted with warm applause. The chairman of the All China Women's Federation walked to the rostrum and handed the box containing the ancient heart to Qiyu. She held his other hand and said excitedly, Thank you for the generosity of the Longyu Group and Mr. Qi. I also want to thank all the guests here today. I think with everyone's joint efforts, the establishment of our Women's and Children's Foundation will be more smooth. Originally, I was going to award the honorary consultant of the All China Women's Federation to the woman who won the most money in today's auction. However, it's a pity that Mr. Qi is a man, so I can only award a title to Mr. Qi on behalf of women and children. I don't think anyone here would have any objections, right? Speaking up to this point, President Li laughed first. Qiyu was stunned and said, Title? What title? Chairman Li took a deep look at him and announced loudly into the microphone, From now on, Mr. Qi is the women's friend of our Yanhuang Republic. Let's give a warm applause to thank Mr. Qi for everything he has done for charity today. Women's friend. Qiyu looked at the chairman of the Women's Federation next to him, dumbfounded. Ryue, who was under the stage, had already doubled over with laughter. Even the big star Xiao Lu, who had been calm before, covered her mouth and chuckled at this time. The guests did not expect that the chairman of the All China Women's Federation had a humorous side. The whole banquet suddenly became much more relaxed with the appearance of Qiyu, the women's friend. I don't know who Mr. Qi is going to give this ring to. I'm very curious. The one who spoke was Xiao Lu, who was closest to the rostrum. Obviously, she was very curious about this young man in front of her, who was not handsome but very special. Holding the wooden box in his hand, Qiyu smiled indifferently and said, "So be it." Miss Xiao Lu's question is precisely what I wanted to announce in front of all the guests here. This ancient heart is something that I have only obtained after experiencing many trials and tribulations. For me, its preciousness is not only reflected on the surface. I hope to be able to put it on the hand of my beloved woman. The energy aura flashed and disappeared. For the ordinary people present, it was impossible to feel. The banquet hall suddenly darkened. Only 2 light beams appeared where Qiyu and Ryue were, making them the focus of the audience at the same time. Under the pursuit of the light beam, Qiyu jumped down from the stage and walked step by step towards Ryue. Looking at his sincere and fiery eyes, Ryue's eyes became moist. At this moment, the sense of loss she felt earlier had long since flown beyond the highest heavens. What was 200 million? Compared to the gaze of the man in front of her, it was no longer important. The whole place was silent. Only the crisp sound of Qiyu's leather shoes as he walked forward could be heard. At this moment, under the light beam, his body seemed so tall and straight. Ryue's beauty was also completely set off, like a moon surrounded by stars. Zhang Jiuxiao's body had already recovered from the numbness, but even he had already forgotten about money. His heart was only filled with joy and excitement. He secretly prayed for his sister. "Ryue, you have finally found a man worthy of your love." The master of the ceremony muttered to himself. Could it be that this has already been arranged? Otherwise, why would there be such a matching light? It's simply too perfect. If there is a man who can also treat me like this, then No one could hear the master of the ceremony's inner thoughts. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Qiyu and Ryue. With firm steps, he finally arrived in front of her. "My dear, we have been together for a long time, but I have never been able to do anything for you. I only hope that you can understand that my love for you will not change in this lifetime, until the end of my life." Qiyu's voice sounded a little low, but when it entered the ears of the women present, it was filled with a magnetic feeling. Qiyu, looking at the man in front of her, Ryue knew that her 6 months of bitter waiting had not been in vain. 6 months! Just as Mingming had said, she did not know how much pressure she had endured. However, for the sake of the Zodiac guardian god warriors, she had no choice but to conceal her true feelings in the depths of her heart. After all, if she were to panic, the morale of the Zodiac guardian god warriors would definitely be greatly affected. At this very moment, she was satisfied as she looked at Qiyu, who was filled with deep emotions. All of her grievances and unhappiness had completely vanished. She knew that this man was worthy of her love. In this lifetime, he was probably the only one who could move her ice-cold heart. Looking at the tears flowing from Ryue's eyes, sparkling and translucent, Qiyu took out the ring from the wooden box and took a step back. Under the gaze of the crowd, under the illumination of the 2 beams of light, he knelt on one knee and raised the ring in front of him. In a gentle voice, he said, "Ryue, my precious, are you willing to let me put this ancient heart on your finger? Will you give me the right to love you forever?" Silence. Although Qiyu's confession of his true feelings seemed so cliché, at this moment, under the witness of the ancient heart, it was filled with a sacred feeling. No one knew who was the first to say yes to him. Following that, the same voice resounded throughout the entire banquet hall. regardless of whether it was a man or a woman. They all repeated the same 3 words. Say yes to him. Say yes to him. Tears continued to fall. Looking at the flickering blue light of the ancient heart, the usually strong Ryue could no longer suppress the emotions in her heart. She also knelt on one knee. She no longer cared about her manners and fiercely threw herself into Chi-Yu's embrace. Under the illumination of the lights, under the gazes of all the female business elites and their companions, the two hugged each other. At this moment, no matter how many people there were around them, they only had each other in their hearts. A melodious voice rang out at the right time. The beautiful song recounted the sweetness of a pair of lovers. That heavenly voice did not require any accompaniment from any instruments, and it had already filled the entire banquet hall with a feeling of tenderness and sweetness. The song swirled in the air, making this moment so romantic. The hugging bodies slowly separated. Chi-Yu did not know when. He had already lifted up Ryue's slender and slightly trembling right hand. The blue light slowly fused with her as white as a spring onion finger. The place where the ring was worn was Ryue's middle finger. It represented that they were passionately in love. The cold feeling could not extinguish the fire in Ryue's heart. Feeling the surging energy from the ancient heart, her heart was already a little intoxicated. The faint blue light complemented her white skin, setting off her stunning beauty. At this moment, Ryue had finally become perfect. At least in Chi-Yu's eyes, she was already absolutely perfect. Gently bringing Ryue's hand to his lips, Chi-Yu gently kissed the ancient heart on her hand. His scorching lips touched the ring that was emitting an icy aura, giving Ryue a feeling of ice and fire at the same time. All of these wonderful things had determined the deep feelings between them, determined that they would be bound together for the rest of their lives. Ryue's heart no longer belonged to herself. Instead, it was completely filled by that ruffian's figure. Let this ancient heart truly become a token of our love, okay? Chi-Yu said softly. Ryue nodded. She really wanted to laugh, but she did not know why. But crystal clear tears flowed from her eyes. I haven't prepared anything. Chi-Yu shook his head and said with a light smile, Okay, what do I need to prepare? You are the greatest gift that the heavens have bestowed upon me. If I really want to exchange a gift, it's very simple. As he said that, he held Ryue's hand and gently swept it across her delicate face. Ryue only felt a slight chill on her face as 3 drops of tears fell. They were actually affected by the ancient heart and turned into ice crystals in the air. She could clearly feel the gentle energy completely enveloping the ice crystals. In the next moment, Chi-Yu had already carefully placed the 3 drops of tears into his own wooden box. Pure tears are the best proof of our love. Use them as your gift to me. As he said that, Chi-Yu supported Ryue's delicate body and slowly stood up. Under the background of that heavenly song, their bodies were tightly joined together, hugging each other's real bodies. Their hearts were intoxicated. Ryue did not even know how she walked out of the hotel, nor did she realize that Chi-Yu did not attend the last dance with her. But she was very clear that today, this day of summer, was going to be the happiest day of her life. All the guests who attended the charity party watched the Lamborghini leave. No one said a word as Chi-Yu and Ryue left, because they did not want to break the almost eternal romance. Watching the shadow of the car disappear, Xiao Lu's eyes became a little hazy. The ancient heart and the scene before her had already touched the heart of this extraordinary woman in the music industry. Inspiration surged like a tide. In her heart, she already had the idea of the next big album. The MC stood next to Chairman Lee of the Women's Federation and asked in a low voice, Chairman, did you arrange all this? Chairman Lee said blankly, Arrange? What arrangement? The MC smiled bitterly and said, If you didn't arrange it, how could the lighting work so well together? Even Miss Lu sang her most beautiful song at the most crucial moment, a phoenix seeking for a phoenix. you should have told me in advance. Oh no, it's better to know in person. This is the most amazing auction party I have ever attended. Chairman Lee was stunned for a moment, but I really didn't arrange it. And in the banquet hall, there doesn't seem to be any special light projecting. The MC was speechless. In the Dragon Field courtyard, they hadn't felt so relaxed for half a year. After Chiyu and Ryua had left, all the Zodiac warriors stayed in the hall of the villa and listened to Wenting tell them everything that had happened. Wenting knew that everyone here was Chiyu's best friend and partner, so she didn't hide anything and told them everything truthfully. The Zodiac warriors were so surprised that they were a little numb. Even Master Zagru, who came out of the room and joined them, couldn't calm down. After all, everything she said could only be described as a myth. Have you digested it? Wenting smiled and looked at the people who had been stunned for half an hour. Master Zagru was the first to come back to his senses. Amitba, this is really incredible. A human can actually return to the era of ancient beasts. No wonder Chiyu could recover Kirin's arm so quickly and we couldn't feel his aura. To be honest, even I thought he was no longer in the human world. Yen Xiaoi smiled and said, he is indeed no longer in the human world. He has gone to the mythical world. Boss is indeed boss. He is really strong. However, I want to see what the Xianyuan sword looks like. However, I think the biggest achievement of Boss's trip is not to recover Kirin's arm, but to bring back such a beautiful sister, Snow Girl. It's not easy. I finally have a chance. Snow Girl looked at him and gently lowered her head. Her previously cold face unexpectedly had a hint of gentleness. Her melting naturally wasn't, because she had just met Yen Xiaoi. The experience of the ancient beasts had completely melted her emperor heart, Snow Lotus heart, and the familiar feeling of Dragon Field courtyard made her feel as if she had returned home. Wenting unhappily said, Little E, you can't have any thoughts of hitting our Snow Girl. Our Snow Girl is a good child. She hasn't even had a boyfriend yet. Yen Xiaoi retorted, I am also very pure. Sister Wen, I am still a virgin. Is this not considered pure? Chapter 168. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Then they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Yen Xiaoi was furious. Bullshit, perverted tiger. I want to duel with you. Su Dong chuckled and said with his standard sissy voice, Duel. All right. Then come, little guy. I want to learn from the boss and let you know why flowers are so red. Hu Guang came over and said to Yen Xiaoi, Brother, I'm not a troublemaker, but if I were you, I wouldn't be able to tolerate what Su Dong said about you. En and Hu Guang were used to cooperating, so they immediately added, That's right, our Xiao Yi is still a virgin today, because he hasn't left the villa today. I say, Su Dong, you know his situation so well. Don't tell me you've contributed your daisy to him. If that's the case, then you're simply too talented. F***CK, Su Dong pointed his 2 index fingers at Hu Guang and Ian. In terms of wretchedness, he was indeed a bit lacking compared to these 2 fellows. Dr. Guan Ping, who was at the side, held back his laughter and said, You guys restrain yourselves. Don't scare the little girl. His body had completely recovered after recuperating, and at the same time, because he had suffered the most serious injuries, he had eaten the most meat. After his injuries had healed, his strength had improved by leaps and bounds, especially the lion mastiff's attack power, which had become stronger than before. Wenting looked at the Zodiac guardian god warriors and suddenly understood why Chiyu was in such a hurry to come back. That's right. He had so many good brothers here. Everything she had said before was not very detailed. After all, everything they had experienced was too complicated, especially the secret of the Kunlun mirrors. She only vaguely said that the 3 of them were able to return to the modern era by a special coincidence. Chiyu had once told her that it was better to keep the matter of having the ability to travel through time a secret for the time being. Furthermore, although Jida was Ming Ming's brother, he was not one of the Zodiac guardian warriors. Say, Do you guys think boss can convince elder sister Ryue? The field mouse suddenly said, separating the furious and embarrassed Yan Xiaoyi from Su Dong. Everyone immediately changed the topic. Jita said, I don't think it's easy. It's not like you don't know the temper of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I reckon that if he wanted to convince Ryue, he wouldn't be able to do it in a day or two. Not to mention Ryue, even I wanted to beat him up. Of course, that was before I knew that he had gone to the ancient beast era. Hu Guang pursed his lips and said, Tisk, you're so capable. When Chi Yu comes back, you can talk to him face to face. I don't think so. Chi Yu is very talented. You look a bit like me. You're naturally handsome, unrestrained, and elegant. Naturally, you can turn Ryue, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, into a soft dragon. Yi Shi pretended to vomit and said a very classic sentence. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you. How can a wretched cobra like you compare to Chi Yu? F***CK, you bitch. Be careful that I don't fart you to death. Everyone was already used to the quarrel between Hu Guang and Ian. As long as these two wretched, bespectacled men were together, it would be hard for them to stop. Zagru said helplessly, Amitba, Miss Wenting, I think it's better for you to bring Miss Shui to rest first. Them. I have no choice. Modi smiled and said, That's right. It's not easy to make these people keep their mouths shut. Wenting glanced at Ming Ming and nodded lightly, saying, All right then, I'll bring Snow Girl to rest first. It's getting late. Aren't you guys going to rest? Actually, she didn't even need to ask. From everyone's eyes, she already knew that they were all waiting for Chi Yu's return. Their excitement was completely from the bottom of their hearts. Ming Ming said, Let's wait for them to come back first. Long time no see. Everyone has a lot to say to Chi Yu. Yan Xiaoyi laughed strangely and said, That's not right. I have nothing to say to boss. I say, Ming Ming, if you have something to say to boss, you don't have to bring us along. Ming Ming glared at him and said, No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. Humph. Wenting smiled as she pulled Ming Ming's hand and whispered in her ear, Now I'll return him to you and Ryue. In this half a year, I know how much pain and suffering you guys have gone through to wait for him to come back. Wait for him. He has never forgotten you guys. Women all had the desire to monopolize. No one would be willing to let someone else take away the love of their heart. However, before returning, in the Kunlun divine fantasy, Wenting had already thought it through very clearly. She knew that Chi Yu's extraordinariness had determined his fate and also her fate. If she wanted to live happily, she had to give up some things. Only by doing so would she be able to keep the one she wanted the most by her side. Ming Ming said gratefully, Sister Ting, thank you for taking care of him these days. Wenting smiled and said, We're a family, aren't we? Chi Yu and I are both orphans. Only by being together with you guys can our family be more complete. Furthermore, I'm a latecomer. To be able to hear you call me sister, I'm already very satisfied. The moment when Ting and Snow Girl went up the stairs, Yan Xiaoyi and Su Dong got into position. Brother Su, you really can't fight with me over her. You have so many confidants. Give her to me this time. I've never been so moved before. Su Dong snorted and said, I've heard you say the same thing countless times. You want me to let you have such a high-quality item? Humph, don't even think about it. Let's see who can win Snow Girl's heart first. You two perverts, do you only think with your lower body? Hu Guang swaggered over. He looked at Su Dong, then looked at Yan Xiaoyi and boasted shamelessly. Why do I feel that Snow Girl looked at me more than you guys just now? Ian smiled sinisterly behind Hu Guang and said, That's right. She looked at you more often. However, I think it's because she's probably never seen such a perverted guy like you in her entire life. All right, is there any meaning in you guys fighting like this? Guan Ping said righteously. Usually among the Zodiac Guardian warriors, he had always been the least talkative. Now that he suddenly opened his mouth, it really made these perverts stare blankly for a moment. Their gazes all fell on him. Guanping smiled and said, "Among us, besides Chi Yu and Grandmaster, I consider myself a decent person. I think you guys won't object. I think a gentle and kind girl like Snow Girl can only be protected by a gentleman like me. Brothers, you see I'm not young anymore. Why don't you give her to me this time?" Hearing his words, everyone's gaze that had just solidified was suddenly filled with contempt. Yan Xiaoyi said snappily, "Damn, old Guan, even you came out to join in the fun. Are you big? Hu Guang is older than you." Guan Ping puffed out his chest and said, "But I'm more handsome than him. Moreover, I'm a decent person." Su Dong curled his lips and said, "That's right. You're a decent person who came back from the Sun Nation. Everyone knows what the Sun Nation means. Using one word to replace it, that's day. Moreover, you just came back from that country. You actually dare to say that you're a decent person. It's simply too despicable. I think you should be called AV Guan. You're definitely a famous male AV star from the Sun Nation." Ian revealed a thoughtful look. Comrade Su's words seemed to have reminded me of something. "Oh, right, Hu Guang. Do you remember that in the pornographic film we watched a few days ago, there was a figure whose back looked very similar to old Guan?" Hu Guang nodded in deep thought and said, "Yes, I also remember. It's the one who handed over the gun at 1, 2, 3. You guys." Guan Ping looked at these guys angrily and finally choked out a sentence. "Aleph asterisk CK, you guys." Yan Xiaoyi laughed and said, "F asterisk CKS? You only have one gun. We have 4 chrysanthemums. Do you want to fight 1 against 4? I really doubt if you can do it. It's said that you have the blood of a lion. As far as I know, a lion's ability in that aspect is indeed very strong. Each time you do it for less than 30 seconds, but you can do it a few hundred times a day. In this aspect, you're definitely comparable to a certain perverted tiger." Su Dong glared at Yan Xiaoyi, snorted, and scanned the crowd softly, saying, "Your waist is not good. Your kidneys are not good. All of you have to use Huiran kidney treasure." Ji De looked at this group of guys dumbfounded and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Were these still the few listless people from before? Why did they all become lively after Chi Yu came back, and their lasciviousness was ignited again? Oh my God! Hurry up and strike a few lightning bolts to kill them all. Master Zigru smiled and shook his head helplessly, saying, "My body is in the mortal world, and my ears don't hear anything." I didn't hear anything. However, Guan Ping, how did you get infected by them? It seems that the word serious can only be a joke. Vol rubbed his fat belly and said to himself, "If we're talking about serious, I'm afraid I'm the only one." However, what I'm most interested in now is whether Boss can convince Sister Ryue. You guys are really blind. Even if you're interested in Snow Girl, I'm afraid you still have to ask Boss for permission. Didn't you hear her say that Boss is her father? Yes. The eyes of the group of perverted people lit up at the same time, and after looking at each other, Su Dong said first, "No matter what, we must help Boss get past T-Rex. And let me do this, after all. I'm more familiar with Ryue." Yan Xiaoyi said disdainfully, "Familiar my ass. If you're not afraid of being beaten up, you can go. Don't you know T-Rex's temper?" Hu Guang laughed and said, "It's not impossible to solve the problem. Look, I have some Spanish gold flies here. I think Chi Yu will definitely need them." While saying that, he wretchedly took out a small bottle from his clothes that had never been clean and shook it in front of everyone. "I can't stand you guys. I'm going to sleep." Modi really couldn't stand it anymore and glared at the group of perverted people and said to Vol, "Bo Guang, you also go to sleep. Don't let these guys pollute." Okay, Vol listened to Modi's words, although he also wanted to wait for Chi Yu to come back, but since Modi said it, he didn't want to wait for another day and hurriedly followed. Ming Ming said with some worry, "Sister Ryue has been in a very bad mood these days, and Chiyu's temper is very stubborn. I don't know if he can explain to Sister Ryue clearly. Explaining is the same as covering up. Men don't need to explain. Hu Guang's small eyes flickered and said, righteously. Ian laughed and said, if that's the case, I'm afraid we're going to have to welcome a pighead boss. Oh, who are you calling a pighead? Chi-Yu's lazy voice came from outside the door. The door opened, and with the sound of footsteps, he appeared in front of everyone. When everyone saw Chi-Yu's appearance, they couldn't help but be stunned. When she left, Ryue was angry, but when she came back with Chi-Yu, she had become a little bird. Ryue, who always paid attention to her image, was in the arms of Chi-Yu at this time, leaning her head on his shoulder, with a faint blush on her pretty face. Her eyes were slightly closed, and she looked extremely shy, completely ignoring everyone present. No, the boss is the boss. Yan Xiaoyi looked at Chi-Yu and Ryue dully, and reluctantly squeezed out a sentence. Looking at Ryue in his arms, thinking of her wild appearance in the car just now, Chi-Yu couldn't help but show a proud smile. If he wasn't in a hurry to come back, maybe he would have done it on the spot in the Lamborghini. Hu Guang nodded seriously and said, yes, the boss is the boss. It's simply the same as me. Looking at the appearance of the T-Rex, it obviously ate the effect of the Spanish golden fly. It's exactly the same as I thought. Su Dong glared at Hu Guang and said snappily, why don't you go to hell? He walked 2 steps quickly to the front of Ryue and Chi-Yu and said with a smile, boss, oh no, from today on I've decided I'll directly call you father-in-law. Father-in-law, please accept this son-in-law's bow. As he said that, he imitated the ancient style, cupped his fists, and actually bowed to Chi-Yu. Su Dong's voice at such a close distance finally made Ryue sober, and she looked at Su Dong with a hazy gaze and asked doubtfully, what are you doing? Su Dong laughed and said, Chi-Yu boss, I really admire you. You can even deal with Ryue's temper in such a short time. You're really talented. Go to the side, boss. Even if you want a son-in-law, you have to accept me. How can you accept such a lewd guy? Yan Xiaoyi hated that he was a step late and hurriedly came over and squeezed to Su Dong's side. En Hu Guang and even Guan Ping ran over. Hu Guang said, Chi-Yu, if you accept me as your son-in-law, I'll also call you boss in the future. What do you think? Ian snorted disdainfully and said, why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Boss, choose me. Choose me. I don't have a girlfriend yet. Although Guan Ping didn't say anything, his gaze was no longer pure. Looking at the 5 guys in front of him, Chi-Yu nodded without batting an eyelid and said, all right, how about this? Let's go to the open space outside. And if any of you can exercise with me for an hour, I'll accept you as my son-in-law. What do you think? Yan Xiaoyi revealed an awkward expression and said, boss, this is a bit too much. You also know that your brother, oh no, your son-in-law's ability is really too lacking. However, I have a pure and kind heart, and my age is also the most suitable. Chi-Yu smiled slightly. His smile was very gentle, but in the eyes of the 5 people in front of him, they felt a chill down their spines and said, I didn't ask you to do it one by one. The 5 of you can come at me together. How about adding my disciple? What a wicked disciple. I haven't taught you for a long time. 1 against 6? Boss, are you kidding me? Even if you recovered Kirin's arm during the ancient behemoth period, it's not like we haven't improved at all. Yan Xiaoyi looked at Chi-Yu in disbelief. Chi-Yu patted Ryue's shoulder and said telepathically, watch how I deal with these guys. Then he said to the others, it's up to you whether you want to come or not. 1 hour. Whoever moves faster will have the chance to become my son-in-law. As he said that, he let go of Ryue's hand, turned around and walked outside. Yan Xiaoyi's group of 5, plus Jida. They looked at each other for only a second, and except for Jida, who was not in a hurry, the other 5 people chased after them like the wind. Standing on the lawn, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a warm smile. He had just stood still when the 6 people, Yan Xiaoyi, Su Dong, Guan Ping, Ian Hu Guang, and Jida, filed out of the villa and stood in a row in front of him. Ruyue held Ming Ming's hand and stood at the side. The two women whispered to each other while looking at Qiyu from time to time. It was obvious that this battle was not very important to them. To them, Qiyu's return was the most important thing. With his hands behind his back, Qiyu looked at the 6 people in front of him and said with a smile, "Come on, it doesn't matter what method you use, as long as you can defeat me. If you can't do it, then whoever can last the longest in front of me will be my son-in-law. Then I might recognize him as my son-in-law. Of course, he has to last for more than an hour." Yan Xiaoyi laughed and said, "Boss, you are too careless. Brothers, let's go. Brothers, let's go." As he said that, he quickly dodged to the back. Apart from Jida, the other 4 people quickly surrounded him. The upcoming battle suddenly became different from before. Powerful auras were released from the tiger, snake, monkey, and dog Zodiac at the same time. Yan Xiaoyi's retreat was not to avoid the battle. A white light shone from his body as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. No one knew what he was doing, but they could feel that the energy in his body was constantly condensing. Looking at the tacit cooperation of the 5 people, Qiyu could not help but secretly nod. He knew that the sheep had a very special position among the Zodiac warriors because his main ability was healing. Although Jida was a step slower, he still quickly caught up. Although he did not have the special abilities of the Zodiac warriors, his constant, intensive training had greatly improved the strength of his body. He could also be considered a fighter in the Yellow Flame Soul. With a smile, the light in Qiyu's eyes softened a little. "Come on." Su Dong and Guan Ping rushed out almost at the same time as Qiyu's voice fell. The surging thundercloud force swarmed towards Qiyu from 2 different directions. The energy of the tiger and the lion mastiff blocked all the space that Qiyu could dodge. Having seen Qiyu's ability, they were very clear about the magic of Kirin. Therefore, they did not hesitate to use their own thundercloud force to restrict Qiyu's movement. Hu Guang and Ian were not idle either. Hu Guang's body instantly softened and he swam towards Qiyu, while Ian leaped high with a golden light. A pair of sharp claws had already grown out of his hands. Qiyu still stood there with his hands behind his back. He did not move at all. He did not seem to feel the surging energy at all. Just as Su Dong and Guan Ping's attacks were about to reach him, suddenly the wind blew. The green wind was solid. The condensed wind turned gray. Circles of wind patterns, with Qiyu's body as the center, instantly spread to the surroundings. Every gust of wind easily cut through everything around it. Guan Ping and Su Dong simultaneously felt that their bodies were instantly locked by a powerful spiritual force. That terrifying spiritual pressure immediately made their bodies stop in the air for a moment. Countless green lights rose from the ground. It was no longer the wind, but slender blades of grass. The blades of grass merged with the wind. They were no longer grass, but sharp blades shining with a green light. Countless sharp blades scattered in all directions. The next moment it was cutting. An ear-piercing sound rang out. It was as dense as silk being torn into everyone's ears. A net-like crack appeared on the originally seamless energy blockade. The surrounding space suddenly distorted. Guan Ping and Su Dong's attacks were actually disintegrated, just like that. The most unlucky one was Hu Guang. The blades of grass suddenly grew, and his slippery body was blocked in an instant. Then they entangled him. Even with his agility, he could not break free from the blades of grass that seemed to have intelligence. The blades of grass, which instantly expanded and grew, were like a large cocoon, enveloping his body. A strong spiritual pressure came from every blade of grass. Suddenly, his slippery body became stiff, as if he was being forced by countless blades. Hu Guang did not dare to move. His feeling told him that if he tried to struggle, he would most likely be cut into pieces by those sharp blades. Boom! A bolt of purple lightning fell from the sky. Although Ian's body was constantly twisting and turning in the process of falling. The moment the purple lightning appeared, it was like a homing missile. In a 10,000th of a second, it had already stuck to his body. The golden light disappeared, and the pitch-black charcoal was thrown far away. The blades of grass carried the wind. They continuously brushed past Guanping and Su Dong. Although they tried to block with all their strength, when faced with these extremely fast and sharp blades of grass, their powerful protective energy was actually restricted to the point where it could not be used at all. When the energy inadvertently revealed a gap, many cracks had already appeared on their clothes. Retreat, they could only retreat. The grayish-white wind swept over. In the next moment, they had already retreated at a speed even faster than before. The grass on the ground moved rhythmically like a wave. Hu Guang and Yi En's bodies were thrown out, landing right beside Guanping and Su Dong. For Zodiac, Guardian God Warriors. All of them were 5 Clouds Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. They were actually defeated just like that. And the person who had defeated them was actually just standing there, not moving at all. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. When Hu Guang and Yi En were flung out, Jida had rushed in front of Chiyu. However, his raised fist could not come down no matter how hard he tried. Of course, he knew the gap between himself and the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Looking at Chiyu in front of him with his hands behind his back, it was as if he was looking at a demon king. A cold light flashed in Chiyu's eyes. His upper body did not move, but his right leg shot out like lightning. A standard whip kick was thrown out. Jida could only subconsciously use his hands to block it. An irresistible force was instantly transmitted into his body. His tall body flew into the air and fell heavily 20 meters away. Yan Xiaoyi looked at everything that happened in front of him with his mouth agape. He even forgot to heal himself. He muttered to himself, "This is too scary. Oh my God, is this real?" Chiyu looked at the 6 people in front of him coldly and shook his head gently. "No wonder Ryue said that you guys have been decadent for the past 6 months. Could it be that I don't even need to use my hands to kill you? With your current state, how can you support the title of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors?" A milky white light was quickly emitted from Yan Xiaoyi's hands and covered the bodies of the 5 people in front of him. At this moment, he could not help but secretly rejoice in his heart. Fortunately, he was not the type of Zodiac Guardian God Warrior who was good at fighting. Otherwise, he was afraid that the result would be even worse. Under the milky white light, the charred color on Yi En's body gradually faded. However, there was not much left of his clothes. The original laughter in his eyes could no longer be seen. At the same time, a serious light appeared in the eyes of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Their anger was completely ignited by Chiyu's rude words. The contempt they had before was swept away. White, red, gold, and black. For colors of light shone from the tiger, dog, monkey, and snake at the same time. They were like 4 time bombs that could explode at any time. Jida only felt pain all over his body. In the face of absolute power, all his martial arts skills had no room to be used. He knew that he was no longer needed in this battle. With the help of Yan Xiaoyi's healing energy, he slowly retreated to the side. "Tell me, what is your current strength?" Looking at the 4 people in front of him, Chiyu asked coldly. At this moment, he seemed to have become the master of this place. He was the youngest, but facing the 4 people whose average age was more than 30 years old, he completely suppressed them in terms of momentum. Taking a deep breath, Su Dong said, "Tiger, 5 clouds bottleneck, in the process of breaking through to 6 clouds." Guanping said, "Dog, 5 clouds." Yi En and Hu Guang said the 2 words at the same time. Finally, Yan Xiaoyi murmured, "Sheep, 3 clouds." The light in Chiyu's eyes flickered slightly. 4 5 clouds, Zodiac, Guardian God Warriors. What kind of strength do they have? Let me tell you, I am now 6 clouds. Use your origin dissimulation. I will give you one more chance. Let's do it too. Ryue's voice came. If there was anything that brought to her just now, it was only shock. Seeing that her man had become so strong. How could she not be excited? Tyrannosaurus Rex's blood was boiling. Holding Mingming's hand, they slowly walked over. Other than the Zodiac King, Chiyu, 7 of the 9 Zodiac guardian god warriors had arrived. Moreover, they only had one target. Dragon, 7 clouds. Under Chiyu's surprised gaze, Ryue announced her strength. Chicken, for clouds bottleneck to 5 clouds. Mingming looked at Chiyu with a smile, but her body had already lit up with a rainbow light. After absorbing Chiyu's Kirin bloodline, her improvement could be said to be the fastest. Now, she was close to the 5 clouds level. What surprised Chiyu the most was Ryue. As expected of a genius among the Zodiac guardian god warriors, she was already 7 clouds. Although 7 clouds Ryue and 4 clouds Mingming alone were not enough to pose a threat to Chiyu, their addition undoubtedly greatly increased the strength of the Zodiac guardian god warriors. Dragon, tiger, snake, goat, monkey, chicken, and dog, the 7 Zodiac warriors surrounded Chiyu in a semicircle. Chapter 169. When he was on his way to the Kunlun Mountains to search for the Kunlun mirrors, he had thought about many things. After the tempering of the ancient beasts, Kirin, the king of the Zodiac, had become more and more mature. At that time, he had already made some plans for his return. Finding all the Zodiac guardian warriors and improving the strength of his brothers were his top priorities. After witnessing the strength of the Bull Demon King, he knew how much he was lacking. The Bull Demon King in his body had always been a ticking time bomb. Who knew if this most powerful beast in history would be able to break free from the mutual life and death domain? Who knew if there would be another fellow at the level of the Bull Demon King in this era? Any luck could lead to failure. Only absolute strength and the most perfect preparation could deal with all the variables. It was definitely not enough to rely on the strength of one person. Therefore, it was imperative to improve the overall strength of the Zodiac guardian warriors. Zagru stood at the entrance of the villa and watched from afar. He could feel Chiyu's completely restrained aura. He could not help but nod to himself. Kirin had finally grown up and matured. Although he was still a ruffian, he was a completely different ruffian. The aura of a true leader had been revealed from his body. Don't hold back. I want to see your true strength. Chiyu's voice was cold, but there was also an unquestionable firmness in it. The gentleness on Ryue's pretty face disappeared. The coldness of the Tyrannosaurus Rex reappeared. Once she entered a battle, she would immediately enter the battle mode, even if she was facing the man she loved the most. It was as if she was born to fight. She floated forward and walked out from the 7 Zodiac guardian god warriors. With a low dragon roar, her body began to change. A faint white mist surrounded her body. Cloud Dragon, a white flowing light and a strong dragon aura appeared in front of Chiyu in an instant. The familiar Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared in front of Chiyu again. He sensed that Ryue's energy aura was stronger than before. Chiyu couldn't help but reveal a trace of gratification in his eyes. He also moved his hands out from behind his back. Who could look down on the most aggressive dragon warrior among the Zodiac guardian warriors? Furthermore, it was a 7-cloud dragon warrior. Sparkling and translucent white scales, 2 large wings stretched out on her back, and the scales covered every part of her body. There was a white mask on her face. The mask was in the form of light and shadow, and it looked somewhat illusory. The mask was exactly the same as her face, and only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. It covered every part of his body. The white scales continued to extending from her waist down to her short battle skirt that was only 8 inches long. Her upper body was also covered in thick scales that resembled armor. In the center of her chest, a milky white bead the size of a ping-pong ball was constantly emitting waves of white light. She had a head of strange, long blue hair, which was draped over her back. There were 2 protrusions on the top of her head, and triangular sharp points extended from the armor on her shoulders. Her dragon eyes were shining, turning from blue to red, like 2 rubies, in sharp contrast with the white scales all over her body. Her arms were spread out on both sides of her body. The 3-inch long sharp claws on her fingers were shining with a cold light. The awe-inspiring dragon aura, as if it was real, locked on Chi-Yu's body. The dragon moved and the Zodiac moved. As Ryua's nature mutation unfolded, all the Zodiac guardian warriors finally showed their strongest side in front of Chi-Yu. Guan Ping's body emitted a golden red light. His body, which was not very tall, instantly swelled up. His low roar gradually became louder, and his calm eyes not only became sharper. At the same time, he also became more ferocious. A strong aura, accompanied by a sense of fiery energy, surged out. After absorbing part of the energy of the NEI pill, his original lion mastiff's ability had changed due to the addition of the fire attribute. En's body was still thin, but his whole body had been covered with golden hair. At the same time, the sharp claws on his hands had also reached about a foot long. His body bent down. The numbness from the thunder and lightning had been completely recovered with the help of Yan Xiaoyi. His sharp and agile eyes were firmly fixed on Chi-Yu. Dark green scales, sinister eyes, wretched and agile movements, representing the power of snakes. Hu Guang's body actually disappeared, completely merging with the surrounding environment. This was an ability after his nature mutation, called nature fusion, which had a special skill similar to that of a chameleon. A snake's attack was always sudden, and it was a surprise attack hidden in dark corners. The colorful feathers, accompanied by Ming Ming's delicate body, looked very attractive, like a rainbow-colored feather dress, wrapping around her body. She spread her arms to both sides, and a more dazzling light than a peacock spreading its tail spread out to the surroundings. However, the rainbow-colored feathers shone with a metallic luster. This time, Su Dong did not move forward. Instead, he retreated with Yan Xiaoyi. White and black tiger fur had already appeared on his body, and the wings on his back were erected. The aura on his body became stronger, especially the pair of tiger paws that had grown 3 times bigger looked even more shocking. At the same time, a dark red light also lit up on his body, and it was unusually eye-catching against the white fur. That was the fire ability that the Su family was originally good at. At this time, it had already merged with his Zodiac guardian ability. The last one, and also the one who changed the slowest, was naturally the weakest, Yan Xiaoyi. He and Vol were the last ones to start cultivating, and they did not have innate abilities. Although they had been cultivating hard, they had only barely reached the level of 3 clouds, and this was even with the help of the other Zodiac guardian warriors and after eating the contract meat. This was the first time that Chi-Yu saw the Zodiac, sheep's nature mutation. White fur covered his whole body, and at this time, Yan Xiaoyi looked a little soft. A pair of long goat horns grew out of the top of his head, and a soft white light spread in the form of ripples. Layers of energy aura were constantly strengthening, and when the various energy molecules in the air came into contact with his body, they seemed to have a certain change. The Zodiac guardian warriors who had completely transformed into the nature mutation flower gave Chi-Yu a completely different feeling. A huge pressure came from all directions. 7 people, 14 eyes, were all focused on him, and all kinds of different energy auras were secretly spreading in the air. Ryua, at the peak of these energies, hid a trace of softness in her cold eyes. Chi-Yu, let us see what you have obtained in the ancient giant beast era. Chi-Yu smiled and said, I will satisfy you. I'll make sure you're satisfied. Let's see if you can last an hour in my hands. Let's see if you can last an hour against me. Even with the addition of Ryu and Ming Ming, it didn't weaken his confidence in winning. Confidence was built in battles. No matter how strong the enemy was, if he did not even have confidence, then he had already lost half of the battle. Even when he was facing the Bull Demon King, he did not back down, let alone facing his companions now. He slowly stretched his hands to both sides of his body, and with Chi-Yu as the center, the 5 square meters around him suddenly lit up. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors, led by Ryue, were surprised to see this. Purple, blue, red, and cyan energy molecules actually transformed into a fine electric light. They quickly surged towards Chi-Yu. The Armani suit disappeared, and Chi-Yu's body was already shrouded by the 4-colored light. The tattoo of Kirin on his chest was so clear. The 4-colored thundercloud force behind him transformed into a screen. The huge energy aura from the tattoo of Kirin on his body revealed the most powerful strength, as if it was alive. In the absence of any sound, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors seemed to have heard Kirin's roar. At this moment, Ryue had already become the commander of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. She shouted coldly, "Yi and Mingming, follow me and attack from above. The rest of you attack from below." The dragon wings behind her instantly spread out, and her delicate body soared into the air. With the support of her 7-cloud dragon power, the first stance of the dragon leaping 18 strikes was formed in an instant. Countless white stars condensed in the air, bringing great pressure to Chi-Yu from above. After the mutation, Ian was obviously different. With a scream, his body soared into the air, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the night sky, leaving only a golden light spot. Ming Ming moved at the same time as him. Although Ming Ming did not have the ability to fly, with the support of the pair of 7-colored wings, she could float in the air. The 7-colored energy condensed into energy feathers around her body, and they quickly rotated around her. The attack from above had already taken shape, but the main force from below was Guan Ping. Guan Ping took a step forward, clasped his hands together, and raised them high above his head. Circles of dark golden light rapidly condensed in his hands in the shape of a vortex. The huge energy actually caused the surrounding air to distort, showing how powerful the energy aura was. The first to attack was Ryue. Countless light spots floated in the air towards Chi-Yu like moths to a flame. The seemingly strange white light spots had covered every corner of Chi-Yu's body in an instant. In order to prevent Chi-Yu from escaping her energy control, Ryue had already used her dragon breath to lock onto his position, but she still used a large area attack. The dragon winged stars, unleashed by a 7-cloud rank, was definitely incomparable to the dragon winged stars, unleashed by a 5-cloud rank. Although there was no ear-piercing sound, each white light spot seemed to be alive, constantly changing its position. Chi-Yu's hands hung by his sides. Only when the white speck of light was about to reach him did he once again raise his left hand. At this moment, the dragon-winged star's energy was fully unleashed. The moment they surrounded Chi-Yu's body from all directions, they rushed towards Chi-Yu without wasting any time. Good. Chi-Yu roared as a silver light shot out from his left hand. A huge shield floated out from his body as he spun gracefully, creating a layer of light. In just an instant, countless surging sounds of energy colliding could be heard. The solid defense of the Kirin mirror was fully displayed in front of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors at this moment. Chi-Yu's movements were very fast. Under the effect of the Kirin mirror, he actually set up a layer of barrier around his body without any hesitation. Along with loud popping sounds, every energy light spot was blocked by the thundercloud force injected by the Kirin mirror. Ryue was surprised to find that the starlight energy of the dragon-winged stars she unleashed would be neutralized by a strange energy once it came into contact with the Kirin mirror. When the starlight energy erupted, it would always be cleverly directed to the side and collide with other starlights. Therefore, on the surface, it seemed that Chi was being bombarded by Ryue's attack, but in fact he didn't need to expend much energy to block it. However, since the battle had already begun, Ryue didn't have a chance to explain to the other Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Ming Ming's attack followed closely after Ryue's. If one had to say who had the most dazzling attack, it would naturally be the chicken Ming Ming. Her rainbow-colored feathers formed a beautiful rainbow in the air and spun towards Chi-Yu's body. However, the rainbow-colored energy feathers with a metallic luster weren't as gentle as they looked. They were actually sharp blades. Even the blades of grass that Chi-Yu had moved previously couldn't compare to them. Ming Ming and Ryue cooperated very well. Just as the dragon-winged star's attack ended, the rainbow-colored rainbow arrived in front of Chi-Yu and seized the opportunity when Chi-Yu had just exhausted his previous energy. However, would Chi-Yu's previous energy really be exhausted? Ming Ming wanted to show off her strength in front of the man she loved, but her man gave her an even greater surprise. A ball of silver light was emitted from Chi-Yu's palm. From Ming Ming's angle, she could see that there was an extremely bright ball of silver light in Chi-Yu's palm. The silk-like silver light expanded to a diameter of about 10 meters in an instant, just in time to encircle her rainbow-colored rainbow. There was no sound of collision, and there was no surge of energy. The rainbow-colored rainbow disappeared so easily. However, the light formed by the silk-like threads didn't stop. As Chi-Yu's right hand shook, he flung it out and shrouded Guanping. At this moment, Guanping's energy had completely condensed. Streaks of dark red electric light swam along with his golden red fists. The condensation of energy had reached its peak. Seeing that Chi-Yu was about to attack him, Guanping punched out with his clasped fists without hesitation. As the light rippled like water, a highly condensed golden red light with a diameter of 1 foot burst out and bombarded the center of the silk-like threads. After throwing the silk-like light, Chi-Yu didn't even look in Guanping's direction. His body had already soared into the air. At this moment, facing the huge pressure brought by the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, he couldn't hold back anymore. Black armor appeared on his body in an instant, and his long silver hair draped over his shoulders. His silver eyes emitted a scorching light, and in a flash he had already closed in on Ryue in the air. His right fist directly punched towards Ryue's chest. To him, the biggest threat among the Zodiac Guardian Warriors was still the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Ryue had just activated her dragon wings chasing stars, but she didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. The white armor on her body expanded instantly. Taking advantage of the time Ming Ming and Guanping attacked, she had already entered the second stage of mutation. When Chi-Yu soared into the air and used the first stage of his Kirin mutation, Ryue just happened to complete the second stage of mutation. Ryue obviously didn't expect Chi-Yu to attack her so quickly, completely ignoring Guanping's attack. She also didn't expect that Ming Ming wouldn't be able to hold him back for even a moment, so she immediately panicked. The wings on her back spread and retracted, and her body immediately tilted. Her slender legs kicked out 21 times towards Chi-Yu, who was pouncing towards her at lightning speed. Appear! Chi-Yu didn't dodge, nor did he use any techniques. He forcefully used his Kirin arm to clash head-on with Ryue's legs. Amidst the loud bang, Ryue's body was bounced back, while Chi-Yu, who was in the air, only paused for a moment. For some reason, Ryue had a feeling of powerlessness in her heart. The energy of Ming Ming's attack wasn't any weaker than Chi-Yu's, but when her 21 kicks collided with Chi-Yu's right fist, his Kirin arm was always able to retract and release. She first diverted a part of her thundercloud force before attacking head-on. In the situation where the energy was equal, she was actually at a disadvantage. At this moment, Ming Ming and Guanping were even more surprised. The energy feather that Ming Ming released disappeared under the silver light, and Guanping's all-out attack also followed in her footsteps. However, under his violent bombardment, the silver light also disappeared at the same time. Chi-Yu blasted Ryue away with a punch, but his movements didn't stop. He stepped on his Kirin arm, and his body quickly turned into a series of afterimages in the air. He drilled out of the shroud of Ming Ming's iron wing technique, and the ear-piercing sound of the rainbow-colored feather drifted past. It narrowly passed by Chi Yu's body. Of course, this wasn't luck, but precise calculation. The golden light fell from the sky silently. The sharp claws didn't reflect any light, and the claw shadows were almost solid, quietly hanging on to Chi Yu's shoulders from behind. For En, who relied on gravity to cover a distance of tens of meters, it was only a moment's work. However, at this moment, it was as if Chi Yu had eyes on the back of his head. He had never forgotten about the Zodiac monkey that soared into the sky. His left hand swung up like lightning, and a silver light shot into the sky. The mirror-like light looked very strong, and it spun like a butcher's knife, drawing a beautiful arc, just in time to meet En's falling body. What Chi Yu threw was the Kirin mirror. In the past, he had used this method of attack with the Kirin mirror to destroy a golden-winged eagle with his own hands. Although En's strength wasn't weak, compared to the golden-winged eagle, he was still quite a bit weaker. However, the Zodiac monkey had the advantage of being a Zodiac monkey, and that was agility. With a sudden thought, a silver light flashed, and En didn't even have time to think. His body had already moved 3 feet to the side in the air, and his feet tapped on the Kirin mirror a few times. The strong rebound force threw him to the side. At this moment, the golden fur on his body was drenched in cold sweat. If he had reacted any slower, the outcome would have been obvious. From the start of the battle until now, only a few seconds had passed, and Jida, who was watching from below, was dazzled. At this moment, the combat power of the warriors of the Zodiac started to show. Screams, ear-piercing screams, pierced Chi Yu's ears like needles. Even with his strength, his body couldn't help but freeze for a moment. Although it was a moment that was calculated subtly, it was still fatal to him, who was facing the attacks of the warriors of the Zodiac. Almost at the same time, Ruiyue and Ming Ming surrounded Chi Yu. Countless shadows of fists and feet with surging thundercloud force attacked Chi Yu's body. Guan Ping, who was below, had already leaped high and punched with both fists. The position of his attack was right at Chi Yu's feet. At this moment, Yan Xiaoyi, who hadn't moved, suddenly revealed a strange smile, and a milky white light floated from his body. His thundercloud force was much weaker than the other warriors of the Zodiac, and it was only now that he had gathered enough energy for his strongest move. The milky white light floated in the air in the shape of a chrysanthemum. It was light and seemed harmless, but it had already reached Chi Yu's side. Chi Yu's adaptability and battle experience could be said to be unmatched by any of the Zodiac guardian god warriors present. Even under such a siege, he was still able to react quickly. The purple light surrounding his body distorted, and Ming Ming and Ruiyue simultaneously felt their attacks met with a strong obstruction, especially Ming Ming. She only had the strength of a 5-cloud warrior, and her body was slightly numb. Her delicate body was thrown out, and Ruiyue's fists and feet met the explosion of the thundercloud force without holding back. Chi Yu's feet stepped on Guan Ping's fists, and his body shot up like a cannonball. A bright light shone from his hands, and the fiery red energy turned into a long rainbow, directly slashing towards En, who was in the air. En looked at the scorching energy that was driven by a special blade-shaped weapon towards his body, and he cursed in his heart. Why was it so unlucky again? He didn't dare to clash with Chi Yu head-on. His body stopped in the air for a moment, and since he couldn't fly, he forcefully changed his direction and landed on the ground. At the same time, his claws crisscrossed in the air, forming a golden light net. He tried to block Chi Yu's attack, and at the same time delay time. Chi Yu snorted coldly. How could the weapon created by Kirin be blocked by ordinary energy? Only the freakish Xianyuan sword could easily destroy the weapon it had transformed into. When the long blade rolled up, En's attack had already been cut into pieces. However, at this moment, a milky white light had quietly attached itself to Chi Yu's body. It wasn't that Chi Yu wasn't vigilant enough, but the milky white chrysanthemum that Yan Xiaoyi sent out did not have any energy aura at all. Even Chi Yu, who was extremely sensitive to spiritual power, couldn't sense it in time. With the chrysanthemum on his body, Chi Yu, who was about to chase after Ian, couldn't help but become sluggish, and the energy in his body seemed to be blocked. His movement speed in the air was instantly reduced by 40%. F*CK, good job, Yan Juhua. Chi Yu naturally understood immediately that this was Yan Xiaoyi's special ability. However, because he hadn't experienced it before, he was suddenly bound by his energy. His body instantly became sluggish. Ming Ming, Ruyue, and Guanping all surrounded him at this moment. Even Ian, who was on the ground, borrowed the force from the ground and pounced in Chi Yu's direction again. Under the influence of Yan Xiaoyi, the weakest among the Zodiac guardian warriors, the situation suddenly changed. Chi Yu, who was originally able to resist, was suddenly surrounded. At this moment, Su Dong, who was standing beside Yan Xiaoyi, suddenly moved. His arms were stretched out horizontally on both sides of his body. He didn't flap his wings, but his body gradually floated up from the ground. The red light condensed into the shape of a sun behind him, emitting a blazing white light. It was as if his eyes were real and focused on Chi Yu. The incomparably terrifying energy aura actually gathered almost all of his energy. At this moment, it was still rising. Great Sun, Destroyer, Divine Art. Chi Yu had been fighting all this time, but his observation skills were very sharp. Seeing that Su Dong had finally unleashed his power after accumulating it for a long time, he immediately recalled the powerful attack of the Su family's patriarch at Tianxiang Mountain, Gui Jianchou. When the Great Sun Destroyer Divine Art was used by Su Dong, its power was not inferior to that of the Su family's master. After all, he was a Zodiac guardian that was close to the 6-cloud level. His own thundercloud force and the Su family's special ability allowed him to improve this special ability to the extreme. Previously, Chi Yu had used the special use of the Silver Dragon cover to neutralize the attacks of Ming Ming and Guanping. But at this moment, he was somewhat uncertain whether the Silver Dragon cover, which specialized in neutralizing energy, could completely neutralize the Great Sun Destroyer Divine Art. The Silver Dragon cover was originally a directional domain. In other words, when the Silver Dragon cover was activated, the user could no longer use energy attacks, and the Silver Dragon cover could only cover a certain area. Therefore, even powerful existences like Emperor Huang and the Mirror Fairy had no way to deal with the energy immunity of the Silver Dragon cover. After much consideration, Chi Yu made improvements to the Silver Dragon cover. The improved Silver Dragon cover was used as an energy attack, and its use was still to neutralize the energy of the enemy's attack. Although the effect was much worse than the real Silver Dragon cover, the advantage was that his own energy consumption was greatly reduced, and it would not affect the use of his other energy. It also made the Silver Dragon cover more flexible. This could be clearly seen when he neutralized the attacks of Ming Ming and Guanping just now. However, the Silver Dragon cover was no longer completely immune to energy. Its power was greatly reduced, so once it encountered a powerful attack, it would not be able to exert the effect of energy immunity. Therefore, when Chi Yu saw Su Dong activate the Great Sun Destroyer Divine Art, he could not help but be slightly surprised. In fact, Su Dong was a very proud person, but he usually did not show it easily, especially in front of his companions. However, just now, Chi Yu did not even move, and he easily neutralized their joint attack. This had completely aroused the pride in his heart, so he did not hesitate to consume energy and used his most powerful attack, the Great Sun Destroyer Divine Art that was combined with the Zodiac Tiger's ability. His pair of tiger palms had already turned blood red, and as he pushed his hands forward, his body had already merged with the red sun behind him. The energy became even hotter, and the faint roar of a tiger constantly shook Chi Yu's mind. At this moment, Chi-Yu was under the siege of 4 Zodiac guardian warriors. Although Kirin was profound, it was definitely not easy for him to break out of the siege with a strong person like Ryue. Seeing that the great Sun Destroyer Divine art was about to be activated, would he be able to deal with such an attack? A light of approval appeared in Chi-Yu's eyes. After all, his companions did not really waste half a year's time. In the air on the ground there was a quick attack, and there was also a sneaky, poisonous snake. All of this was the perfection of their cooperation. Even with the strength of a 6-cloud warrior, it was already difficult to deal with their joint attack. One should know that the strength of the 6-cloud warrior, Kirin, had already surpassed the strength of an ordinary Zodiac warrior. The second stage of Kirin's mutation was instantly activated. Chi-Yu shouted, and the huge thundercloud force in his body instantly erupted. That was the source of Kirin's energy. Surrounded by black and silver light, the Zodiac warriors around him were forcibly shaken away. Huge wings fluttered, and the huge thundercloud force instantly condensed. The feeling of being filled with power made him look up to the sky and roar. "All right, I'll show you my true strength." Chi-Yu moved, and his body moved like lightning. Compared to before, his speed was at least twice as fast. His gaze swept across the Zodiac warriors in front of him, and the strong spiritual pressure immediately made them unable to fully exert their energy. At the same time that Chi-Yu completed the second stage of mutation, Yan Xiaoyi's strong anus energy could no longer be restrained. After all, the gap in strength was still too big. How could his thundercloud force restrain Chi-Yu, who was in the double mutation? Chapter 170. This time, Chi-Yu went all out. Although it was 1 against 4, under the effect of his 4 thundercloud force, he did not feel the slightest bit overwhelmed. The water thundercloud force attacked Guanping. The fire thundercloud force attacked Ryue. The wind thundercloud force attacked Mingming. And the thundercloud force attacked in purple, blue, red, and green. For shadows of fists lit up at the same time, bombarding the 4 Chi-Yu. Because Ryue's strength was the strongest among the Zodiac guardian warriors, Chi-Yu took extra care of her. The fire thundercloud force was mixed with Kirin's origin energy. Together with Kirin's arm, it exploded with tyrannical strength. For roars sounded almost at the same time. The 4 figures around Chi-Yu were either sent flying or falling. Unexpectedly, none of them were able to resist this full power punch. The second stage of Kirin's transformation was the ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds. How could it be easy to resist? Chi-Yu's expression changed slightly. The wings on his back were fully opened. A dark red light was emitted from Kirin's wings. Clearly visible energy elements quickly gathered towards his body. Chi-Yu's movements were very fast. At the same time, when the 4 punches knocked the 4 people away, a silver light had already gathered in his hand. A long bow appeared out of thin air. The length of the bow was actually about the same as his height. When he pulled the bow, the energy became the best arrow. The bow was the king of all weapons. The energy of the 4 elements quickly gathered towards the bow from Chi-Yu's right arm. The fusion of purple, blue, red, and green looked very dazzling. Chi-Yu pulled the bow with his right hand. The bow was like a full moon. The surging energy aura gathered on the sword, a silver bowstring. It looked so dazzling. The energy arrow of the 4 elements was aimed at Su Dong, who was like a rising sun. The Sun Destroyer magic had been fully unleashed, but what he was facing was Chi-Yu's most powerful attack. Even Emperor Huang had once been blocked by Chi-Yu's completely condensed energy attack. Could the great Sun Destroyer Divine art withstand it? At this moment, Chi-Yu's eyes had turned pure silver. The energy in his body was raised to the extreme. Although his thundercloud force was only at the 6-cloud level, it was a fully condensed thundercloud force. The condensed energy was concentrated on the arrow, and there was no need for any mental pressure to assist it. Su Dong's mind was completely locked on by the arrow. Su Dong knew that this was an attack that couldn't be avoided at all. The fiery red light quickly engulfed Su Dong's body. The sun, destroyer magic, had completely merged with his body. Su Dong's attack was beyond Chi Yu's expectations. The huge sun light emitted. It actually condensed into a point 3 meters away from him. A red light suddenly shot out and shot towards Chi Yu. The bowstring was released. There was a soft hum. The arrow couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The long arrow, condensed by the 4-colored light, pierced the red light in an instant. There was no sound of an explosion. There was only the rapid retreat of the red light. After releasing the arrow, Chi Yu's body didn't stop. He didn't even look at the effect of his arrow. His body instantly fell. He just happened to dodge the attacks of Yi An and Ming Ming. However, Chi Yu's fall also happened to meet Guan Ping. Guan Ping couldn't fly, and he didn't have an abnormal jumping ability like Ian. However, his attack on the ground was second only to Ryue among the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. His strong body suddenly stuck close to Chi Yu. After all, he was facing 7 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Guan Ping was very clear. As long as he could entangle him, the final victory would belong to his side. As his body fell, Chi Yu's flexibility was greatly reduced. Seeing that the golden red fist was already in front of him, he didn't have time to dodge. His left hand blocked Guan Ping's fist. At the same time, the longbow in his right hand changed. A huge silver hammer suddenly smashed towards Guan Ping's chest. With a loud bang, Guan Ping's body was shaken and flew out. Blood spurted from his mouth. He had already been seriously injured by Chi Yu's attack. Of course, under the situation that Chi Yu used a large amount of thundercloud force and continuously launched attacks, he was also shaken by Guan Ping's all-out attack. His face became even paler. With his combat experience, Chi Yu didn't stay at the same place. He turned into a shadow and quickly retreated to the side. It turned out that his cautiousness was necessary. A black figure scuttled past the position that Chi Yu had just left. Hu Guang, who had been patiently waiting in the dark, finally launched an attack. The poison of the black mamba instantly spread and enveloped Chi Yu's body. The black mamba was the most aggressive poisonous snake. Hu Guang fully embodied this point. He didn't move, but once he launched an attack, it would immediately bring about a storm. After the origin mutation, physical attacks could barely hurt him. Even energy attacks couldn't completely lock his body. From a strange angle, the poisonous snake fangs crazily attacked Chi Yu. Chi Yu's body was retreating. The other Zodiac Guardian Warriors had also closed in. Only Su Dong was still floating in the air. The red light condensed by the sun, destroyer magic, had completely disappeared. Blood flowed continuously from the corner of Su Dong's mouth. Floating in the air, he could only rely on his tiger wings to maintain his body's balance. He had already tried his best to condense the energy he had launched. However, compared to Chi Yu's 4 elements energy arrow, it was still a lot worse. However, Su Dong could be proud. If it wasn't for the threat that his sun destroyer magic brought to Chi Yu, which made Chi Yu launch the 4 elements energy arrow with all his strength, he probably wouldn't have been surrounded by the other Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Su Dong clearly felt that his body could no longer move. There was a bowl-sized hole in the right side of his chest. Blood kept spurting out. There was no feeling of pain, only numbness. He knew very well that if Chi Yu's arrow had been aimed at the left side of his chest, he would have left this world forever. The glory of that arrow was indeed something that the sun, destroyer magic, couldn't resist. Chi Yu also had no choice. After all, he was only one person. If he couldn't defeat them one by one, he would be besieged by the 7 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. The final outcome would be defeat. A soft white light enveloped Su Dong's body. The bleeding wound solidified. No more blood flowed out. A trace of power came from the milky white light. The wound on his chest also healed quickly. finally feeling pain. Su Dong looked gratefully at Yan Xiaoyi below. He knew that there was no room for him to participate in today's battle. There was no longer any room for him to participate, so he reluctantly folded his wings and descended diagonally. Ming Ming, En Huguang, and Guan Ping, who was slightly injured, seemed to have regarded Qi Yu as their mortal enemy. Their powerful attacks blocked all of Qi Yu's escape routes. Among them, Huguang was the biggest threat to Qi Yu. His black mamba's poisonous fangs were everywhere, threatening him at all times. At the same time, the faint fishy smell also made Qi Yu feel dizzy. However, even in the face of the siege of the 4 Zodiac guardian warriors, Qi Yu relied on his speed and the absolute power manifested by the condensation of energy to resist. At this time, it was not that he couldn't break through the siege, but his attention was not on the 4 Zodiac guardian warriors around him. His spiritual power was locked on the sky. A large cloud was condensing in the sky. In the pitch-black night, the white clouds still emitted a gentle glow. Within the clouds, a pair of resplendent ruby eyes stared down at Qi Yu as a bright dragon roar resounded from the sky. However, the area of the dragon roar was limited to the dragon field courtyard. Yes, Ryue did not follow the other Zodiac guardian warriors to besiege Qi Yu. It was not because she was injured under Qi Yu's special care, but because the Tyrannosaurus Rex finally launched her most powerful attack, the Dragon God. The gigantic white dragon had crystalline scales and a boundless, domineering aura. Its gigantic dragon claws wandered through the clouds, and its gigantic body had already completely enveloped the 5 people fighting below. At this moment, Ryue's thundercloud force had been raised to the limit. Having reached the 7 cloud realm, she could finally use the power of the divine dragon true body. It was also because of her appearance that Qi Yu felt nervous. The divine dragon true body, the huge dragon that Ryue transformed into, was actually more threatening to Qi Yu than the white snake. They were both white dragons, but Ryue was a white dragon with wings, a natural white dragon. From any point of view, her rank was higher than the white snake's. The huge energy aura did not make Qi Yu feel like retreating. Feeling the huge pressure that Ryue brought to his body and spirit, Qi Yu's eyes revealed a look of appreciation. In today's battle, the biggest surprise to him was Ryue and Su Dong. Although Su Dong's sun destruction magic needed a long time to condense energy, it was enough to make Qi Yu excited. If he had not quickly condensed his energy during the Ancient Beasts period, he might not have been able to deal with Su Dong's attack. Even so, the 4-element energy arrow finally injured Su Dong. But at the same time, Qi Yu also experienced the power of the sun destruction magic. After condensing, the heat was actually above his Kirin True Fire, and the explosive power was much stronger. "Boss, surrender!" Yan Xiaoyi shouted to Qi Yu while constantly urging energy to heal Su Dong's injuries. Looking at the huge injuries on Su Dong's body, he could not help but frown. He vaguely felt that Qi Yu had gone too far. After all, Su Dong's injuries were very serious. Even with the help of his healing magic, it would take a long time for him to recover. That was a penetrating wound. Even 4 of his sternum were broken, and his lungs were seriously injured. In fact, Yan Xiaoyi and Su Dong did not know that if Qi Yu had urged the energy on the arrow when it entered his body, with the wind, fire, thunder, and water energies, not to mention his chest, even if it had only hit his arm, it would have been enough to completely tear Su Dong's body apart. If we don't fight until the last moment and lose all our ability to resist, how can we say the word surrender? The word surrender will never exist in the dictionary of us Zodiac guardian breed warriors. I don't have that, and neither can you guys. Under the joint attack of the 4 Zodiac guardian breed warriors, Kirin's mirror played a great role. At this moment, Qi Yu was in a completely defensive state. Kirin transformed into a small shield and cooperated with Kirin's mirror to neutralize the attacks of the 4 Zodiac guardian breed warriors. Ryue's voice came from the mouth of the white dragon in the sky. Chi-Yu is right. No one should give up until the last moment. The dragon swam in the sky, and the clouds moved along with it. The attack of the dragon god had finally begun. At the same time, Ryue's voice rang in the ears of the 4 Zodiac guardian breed warriors who were besieging Chi-Yu. The 4 of them retreated at lightning speed and made way for Chi-Yu's position. The white dragon swooped down without any reservation. Ryue did not choose to attack with energy. The white dragon's 2 huge front claws directly clawed at Chi-Yu. She actually wanted to fight hand to hand. Chi-Yu's eyes lit up and he shouted, "Great!" The black light converged and the silver patterns on his body lit up completely. His entire body doubled in size in an instant. Instead of retreating, he advanced and flew towards Ryue. A strange feeling suddenly rose in Ryue's heart because she suddenly lost the sense of Chi-Yu's energy. Chi-Yu, who was flying in the sky, looked like an ordinary person. There was no energy emitting from his body. The sudden change caught Ryue by surprise. After all, she was not facing an enemy, but the man she loved the most. The front claws of the dragon suddenly slowed down a little, but at this moment something strange happened. Chi-Yu's 2 big hands actually grabbed both of Ryue's front claws. At the moment of contact, dense energy exploded. He actually grabbed Ryue's transformed dragon god in midair and threw it away. Ryue was thrown 100 meters away before she could stabilize her body. She knew that Chi-Yu had already shown mercy. She couldn't help but be shocked. She knew very well how much energy she had after transforming. Although the dragon god consumed a lot of energy, it could also increase her strength by several times after transforming, especially the strength of her body. "Don't look down on me." An evil smile appeared on Chi-Yu's face. If it wasn't for Ryue's sudden withdrawal, he naturally wouldn't have stopped. To him, the biggest gain from becoming Emperor Huang's disciple was the use of energy. Ryue's dragon god was indeed powerful. After transforming, it had already surpassed Chi-Yu, who had consumed a lot of energy. However, at that moment, Chi-Yu was able to completely concentrate all his energy on his hands. All the energy represented the energy of every cell in his body. At that moment, his body was extremely weak, but at the same time it made his hands extremely strong. Even in the face of the dragon god, he didn't retreat. The Zodiac guardian god warriors below looked at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. They couldn't believe that Chi-Yu could actually defeat Ryue, who had transformed into the dragon god, with his bare hands. This could only be explained as inconceivable. Chi-Yu's attacks did not stop. 15 minutes, only 15 minutes have passed. Following his nightmarish voice, Chi-Yu's body had already arrived in front of Ming-Ming. Ming-Ming only felt her vision blurred. In the next moment, Chi-Yu, whose body was twice as big as before, had already opened his arms to hug her. Similarly, she didn't feel any energy. However, with the previous scene where Ryue suffered a loss, Ming-Ming naturally understood that this was not a simple attack. The main strength of a chicken was in its arms. Seeing that Chi-Yu's arms were about to hug her, Ming-Ming gritted her teeth and let out an ear-piercing shriek. While shocking Chi-Yu's mind, she operated the Iron Wing skill to the extreme and blocked Chi-Yu's arms. Everything happened very quickly. While Chi-Yu's voice was still floating in the air, the attack on Ming-Ming had already begun. The feeling of weightlessness suddenly came. The arms that should have hugged her suddenly disappeared. The feeling of using the wrong force almost made Ming-Ming vomit blood. At this time, Chi-Yu's palms had already pressed on her shoulders. Before she could even scream, Ming-Ming's body had already been thrown away, blood spurting out wildly. After Su Dong, he also suffered a great injury. Ian shouted in surprise, "Damn, Chi-Yu, you're serious." Chi-Yu's cold voice sounded, "When did I lie?" In the next moment, his body had already left the place. Like a slippery fish, he passed through the gap between Guanping, En, and Huguang. In the air, Ryue had returned. The 3 Zodiac Guardian warriors on the ground also felt Chi Yu's determination. In the face of such a huge pressure, their strength had been raised to an unprecedented limit. A dazzling light flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. Although with my current strength, if given time, I can still defeat you, I will inevitably be injured. It's time to end this. A dark red light shone on the ground without warning. The fog around Ryue's body disappeared, and all the Zodiac Guardian warriors were shrouded in endless darkness at this moment. A miserable shriek rang out, causing Ryu and the others to be shocked. That was because the miserable shriek came from Yen Xiaoyi. Little guy, your chrysanthemum ability is not bad. The delay effect actually had a great effect on me even when you were 3 levels lower than me. However, I still want to let you know what the gap in strength is. The surroundings suddenly lit up. The light was dark red in color. Ryue suddenly remembered the scene when she was intercepted by Chiyu on the highway in her sports car. She hurriedly shouted, "Everyone be careful. This is an illusion. Gather together so that he won't break us one by one." "Ryue, don't you understand? It's useless. This is my special domain, called the Art of 1,000 Tricks and 100 Changes. In this domain, unless one of you can completely surpass me in strength, I am the master of this place. Sumeru is like a mustard seed. In here, any gap can become infinitely big or infinitely small." Chi Yu's body did not appear, but his voice came from all directions. It was impossible to determine his location. Chi Yu's strength had completely shaken the hearts of every Zodiac Guardian God Warrior. Just when they thought that they had a chance at victory, such a situation had occurred. The situation had completely reversed in this empty space. They found that a feeling of fear had risen in their hearts. 3 figures floated over. Perhaps it was to let Ryue and the other 3 identify them. The figures floated very slowly. They were Su Dong, Ming Ming, and Yen Xiaoyi. At this time, Yen Xiaoyi's face was extremely pale. His hands were pressed on his lower abdomen, and a stream of blood flowed continuously from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, his lower abdomen had been hit by Chi Yu. In today's battle, I want you to understand that only with absolute strength can you become the final winner. Never let the enemy know how strong you are, and never be satisfied with what you have achieved. As a Zodiac Guardian Warrior, behind our responsibilities, we need the support of strong strength. Frankly speaking, in today's battle, everyone's strength is much better than I expected. However, this is far from enough. We are the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, the strongest guardians of the East. Therefore, we need more strength to be able to protect everything that we need to protect. Chi Yu suddenly appeared 30 meters away from Ryue and the other 3. "Ryue, your divine dragon true body is indeed powerful. Even I have to go all out when facing it head-on. However, the divine dragon true body has its flaws. First of all, when you use it, it requires too much time. Although 10 seconds may not be a big deal to you, in a battle with a real powerhouse, 10 seconds can even determine life and death hundreds of times. Secondly, although the divine dragon true body is powerful, it consumes too much energy. How much energy does a huge dragon body need to be maintained? And how much energy can you use in your attacks? If you want to truly unleash its power, it is only possible in a group fight. Moreover, if I remember correctly, your divine dragon true body is only the foundation of the last few moves of the 18 dragon leaping strikes. If you want to truly unleash its power, you need to continue to train hard. Su Dong's situation is similar to yours, except that his Great Sun Destroyer technique requires a longer time to condense energy. However, his condensed attack is indeed worthy of all of you to learn. As for the rest of you, using a single attack method and scattering energy in all directions is a great failure. If I used a guerrilla fighting method, it would not even take an hour. I can still defeat all of you." Ian retorted, "I don't believe it. Although our energy consumption is great, you are fighting 1 against 7. Don't tell me that the consumption is not great. If the battle continues to the end, I'm afraid that you will be the first to fall. Chi Yu smiled indifferently. Is that really so? This is the difference in strength. Without using the 1,000 opportunities and 100 changes technique, my energy recovery speed is at least 3 times faster than yours. Don't ask me why. Very soon, you will understand. All right, let me end today's battle. Be careful. Ruyue's warning had just sounded, but she was surprised to find that Guan Ping, Guang, and Ian, who were originally beside her, had disappeared at the same time, and their figures had appeared 1,000 meters away, turning Mustard Seed into Mount Sumeru. Using the gap between the 4 of them to enlarge, Chi Yu had already separated the 4 of them. As he continued to use the 1,000 opportunities and 100 changes technique, he was becoming more and more proficient. Invisible, Chi Yu disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was opposite Guan Ping. Guan Ping's fist, carrying a huge amount of energy, it only destroyed a shadow. Teleportation allowed Chi Yu to attack like a fish in water. The violent shock on his back caused Guan Ping to cry out miserably, becoming the 4th heavily injured person in Chi Yu's hands. And in the next moment, Chi Yu's body appeared out of thin air next to Ian. No matter how fast Ian was, he could not be faster than teleportation. Moreover, when Chi Yu appeared, he had already used the 1,000 opportunities and 100 changes technique to create 10 identical figures. After 2 attacks, Ian and Guang followed in Guan Ping's footsteps and were seriously injured by Chi Yu and vomited blood. The divine dragon true body consumed a lot of energy for Ruyue, and when she wanted to help, she found that the distance between her and the other 3 was increasing. I said, in this domain, I am the absolute master. This is Kirin's most powerful weapon, so you have no chance here. Chi Yu's voice sounded next to Ruyue, giving her a fright. I'm sorry, my dear wife, I can't be biased. Chi Yu's fist landed on Ryue's body, but a huge amount of energy condensed into a sharp needle and pierced into the white dragon's spine. The intense pain caused Ryue's body to tremble, and she had already revealed her true form. Blood spurted out of her mouth, and she used all her strength to dissolve the sharp needle-like energy at the cost of consuming more than half of her energy. The dark red light disappeared, and the bright moon reappeared in the sky. The surroundings were still surrounded by the fresh smell of grass and the cool summer night. However, everything had changed, and it was the people who had changed. Des sat there dumbfounded, looking at the 7 people lying on the ground next to Chi Yu. The dazzling battle from before had already dazzled him, but the final result was something he could never have imagined. From the beginning to the end, it had only taken a total of 20 minutes. However, the outcome was so tragic. Not only did Chi Yu win, but the 7 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, including Ruyue and Mingming, were all seriously injured. Although they were still conscious, it was obvious that they had lost the ability to move. Chi Yu shook his head lightly and said, It's a pity that Modi and Vol aren't here. I'll make up for it in the future. Des stood up angrily. Although he was deeply afraid of Chi Yu's strength, he could not control the impulse in his heart when he saw his sister lying on the ground, still vomiting blood. Chi Yu, are you *King crazy? These are your companions, your friends. How could you be so heavy-handed? Looking at Des' slightly twisted face, Chi Yu smiled and said, Brother-in-law, or should I say my good disciple, you'll understand in a while. Oh, by the way, there's something I have to warn you in advance. Don't tell anyone about what you've seen and heard today, not even General G. The era of the ancient beasts is indeed magical. But in order not to destroy the balance of the entire world, I hope that this secret will only be spread among our inner circle. You're my disciple and also Ming Ming's brother, so I'm not afraid of you. However, if this news were to spread, no matter who you are, I won't let you off. Chi Yu's smiling expression became very serious towards the end. This caused the fear in Des' heart to increase a little. All right, I won't spread this news. But you have to hurry and save Ming Ming and the rest. Can't you see that they're all seriously injured? Chi-Yu, you've changed. When did you become so ruthless? Chi-Yu shook his head lightly and said, No, you're wrong. I haven't changed and will never change. I'm still the same Chi-Yu. However, you have to understand whether they're bleeding or heavily injured today. They're all injured by my hands. What if it's an enemy today? What if it's an enemy that's stronger than me? Would it still be a serious injury? I just hope that everyone understands that only powerful strength can guarantee everything. There's no limit to increasing one's strength, and everything is possible. Of course, I have other motives in beating them up. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have used the domain. Look, why hasn't Master Zagru said anything? Zagru, who had been watching everything from the side, smiled and said, Because Kirin has truly grown. I believe that you'll be able to control all of this. Looking at each other, Chi-Yu saw trust in Zagru's eyes, and his heart warmed slightly. A faint light was emitted from his body, the power of time wind. Under the wind's support, the 7 people on the ground were lifted up. Chi-Yu's use of energy was indeed at the pinnacle, and under the effect of the wind, the 7 Zodiac guardian warriors sat cross-legged. Chi-Yu took a deep breath. The battle just now had consumed a lot of his energy, and because of the continuous attacks from the 7 people, he didn't have much time to recover his energy. In order to leave a deep impression on everyone, he didn't even choose the most energy-saving fighting method. The green wind disappeared, and Chi-Yu sat cross-legged in the middle of everyone. The 7 Zodiac guardian warriors' gazes were focused on him. At this time, these Zodiac guardian warriors were very weak, and each of them had suffered different degrees of injuries. Among them, Su Dong suffered the most serious injury. Chapter 171. Then a blue light appeared. That was the light of the water thundercloud force. In the previous battles, the water thundercloud force that Chi-Yu used the most was the water thundercloud force. This time it was in full effect. Mixed with the natural energy and Kirin's special marrow and muscle-washing art, the energy began to seep into the pores of the 7 people. Under the effect of the gentle energy, the Zodiac warriors subconsciously closed their eyes and felt the changes in the energy. Don't resist. Circulate the energy according to your usual cultivation method and drive the energy into your body. Chi-Yu's voice sounded in the hearts of the Zodiac warriors. The effect of Kirin's marrow and muscle-washing art had begun. Using his own energy to heal and transform the bodies of the 7 people at the same time was something he had planned for a long time. Although the Zodiac warriors' cultivation method was based on the ascending cloud art. After all, each of the Zodiac warriors had their own special abilities. If it was a one-on-one transformation, Chi-Yu could naturally do it easily. However, if it was a one-on-one transformation, due to the different energy and resistance of each person, it would be impossible to succeed. Today he had seriously injured them, which naturally reduced their ability to resist. At the same time, it would make the Zodiac warriors realize that they were not strong enough. That was why Chi-Yu chose to do this. The natural energy continued to condense into Chi-Yu's body from the plants planted in the Dragon Field courtyard and the plants outside. The water thundercloud force was also constantly strengthened by the energy molecules in the air. As soon as the healing and transformation process began, Chi realized that the natural energy in Baiji's era was many times weaker than that in the era of the ancient beasts. He also secretly rejoiced in his heart. Fortunately, he became the source of nature during the era of the ancient beasts. Otherwise, the natural energy in his body would not have become so strong. Jida looked at the people enveloped by the energy and couldn't help but show a trace of envy in his eyes, although he didn't really understand Chi-Yu's purpose. But from Chi-Yu's actions, he could see that he obviously had a special reason for doing this. He stood up, walked to the gate of the Dragon Field courtyard and sat down. Together with Grandmaster Zagru, they stood guard outside and inside the courtyard. Chi-Yu didn't dare to enter a meditative state, because he needed to have precise control over the energy. Only then would he be able to perfect the transformation of each of the Zodiac warriors. As a result, his rate of recovery was far slower than his rate of consumption. The thundercloud force in his body was depleting rapidly. Qi Yu knew that he had made a mistake in his judgment. The Zodiac guardian warriors were stronger than he had expected. When he was halfway through the transformation, his own energy had already begun to decline. He could not help but feel anxious. After all, this kind of modification would only have the best effect the first time. If he gave up halfway, even if he tried again in the future, he would not be as good as before. An idea struck Qi Yu, and he called out in his mind. Zagru had been attentively watching Qi Yu's group of 8. Suddenly, he felt a huge wave of energy coming from the sky. He subconsciously stood up, and a milky white Buddha's light penetrated his body. At this moment, he saw a red cloud falling in Qi Yu's direction. His tense nerves relaxed. With his Buddha's eyes, he could clearly see that the person who had suddenly arrived was Wen Ting. Under the call of Qi Yu's spiritual power, Wen Ting arrived in time, and the red light fused with Qi Yu. With the support of Wen Ting's huge energy, Qi Yu was immediately refreshed. Because he and Wen Ting could use the fusion ability, during the energy transformation process, he and Wen Ting could absorb the energy molecules in the air together. In this way, not only would the consumption be reduced, but with the support of Wen Ting in her perfect state, he would even gradually recover his thundercloud force. Time passed very quickly during cultivation. When the sun shone on the earth and the cicadas' cries became clearer, the light on the lawn of the dragon field courtyard finally disappeared. The first to open her eyes was Ryue. She could not help but let out a soft cry and looked at her body in surprise. Her skin had become more sparkling and translucent than before, and her whole body was full of vitality. What made her even more surprised was that the meridians in her body, which were originally filled with energy, had become more than 3 times wider. Moreover, the tenacity of her meridians was unknown as to how much stronger they were compared to before. The meridians that were originally injured by Qi Yu had already recovered, and her whole body was full of energy. Although the dragon thundercloud force in her body had not recovered much, the changes in her body had already made her full of excitement. It should be known that after reaching her level, she had to constantly maintain her meridians in the process of cultivation, which made her cultivation gradually slow down. Even a small change in the body would greatly improve her strength, let alone in this situation. Ryue's gaze was looking for Qi Yu's figure. At this time, Qi Yu looked very calm. He was sitting there with his upper body naked, and his bronze skin reflected a faint luster under the sunlight. The other Zodiac guardian warriors also woke up one after another. What Ryue felt, they naturally felt too. An excited expression appeared on everyone's face. They finally understood why Qi Yu was so serious about the battle yesterday. Oh my God, I have broken through. An expression of ecstasy appeared on Su Dong's face. In just one night, the penetrating wound on his chest had completely recovered with the treatment of Yan Xiaoyi and the effect of Kirin's marrow washing and muscle, tendon changing skill later. What made him even more excited was that he had broken through the bottleneck that he had been in for many days, becoming the 3rd Zodiac guardian god to break through to the 6th cloud level after Ryue and Qi Yu. It should be known that the 6th cloud level and the 5 cloud level were completely different concepts. After reaching the 6th cloud level, not only could he carry out the 2nd stage of origin mutation, but he could also cultivate a more powerful origin ability at the same time. Wen Ting had already gone back to rest. She knew that Qi Yu had a lot of things to deal with. When she released the fusion, she unreservedly left her energy to Qi Yu and went back to her room to cultivate. With Wen Ting's support and the subsequent recovery, Qi Yu's thundercloud force had recovered to about 70% of its peak state. Everyone can feel it, right? Qi Yu smiled and was the last one to open his eyes. The glaring sunlight had no effect on powerhouses like them. Yan Xiaoyi stood up and stretched his body. He chuckled and said, "Boss, hit me. Quickly, the harder the better. If I can get such a good reward every time I get beaten up, I'd rather be your closest sandbag." Qi Yu floated up and kicked him away. Annoyed, he sent him flying with a kick. "In your dreams, do you want to reap without sowing? It seems that I have to give you special training. What I said last night was for nothing." Su Dong laughed out loud. "Father-in-law, can I be your son-in-law now? I'm already at the 6 cloud level. In terms of strength, none of them are my match." Qi Yu rolled his eyes. "Did you last for an hour?" Can't you make an exception for this?" Qi Yu snorted and said, "My time is tight. I don't have time to talk to everyone. I've already modified your meridians. The natural energy modification won't have any side effects. For a period of time from now on, you must seize the time to train and stabilize your expanded meridians. You should have noticed that in the battle last night, my meridians are much longer than yours. In the continuous battle, I can still defeat you. This is the effect of the modified meridians. At the same time, it's also the difference in the form of energy. You want to have a longer, lasting battle strength. In addition to avoiding the consumption of energy during the battle, you must also try to compress the thundercloud force in your body during the training process. Only by compressing the energy will you be able to unleash greater power when attacking, and only then will you be able to last longer in battle. If it was just a simple lecture, it would take a certain amount of time to understand. But after the battle last night, these Zodiac guardian god warriors deeply understood Qi Yu's meaning. After Qi Yu taught them some of the actual combat experience that Huang Emperor taught him, he immediately called out Vol and Modi. Through the face-to-face combat, he taught them another lesson. Of course, Modi and Vol's injuries were not much better than the other Zodiac guardian god warriors. But Vol's injury was a bit more serious. "Vol, why are you so stupid?" Modi hugged Vol, who was covered in blood, and tears kept flowing from his pretty face. Originally, Vol was seriously injured by Qi Yu's attack, so Qi Yu turned his attack to Modi. Just when Modi couldn't resist and was about to be injured by Qi Yu, the seriously injured Vol suddenly rushed out and blocked Qi Yu's powerful attack for Modi. Injury on injury. At this time, he was completely unconscious. As the initiator, Qi Yu stood there and sighed in his heart. "Vol, good brother, boss can only help you so much. Whether you can succeed in the future depends on your own ability." With his strength, although Vol rushed to block, he could still dodge and attack Modi. But in order to help Vol save the damsel in distress, Qi Yu didn't dodge Vol, which led to the scene in front of him. Of course, Vol's injury was far from as serious as it seemed. For his good brother, how could Qi Yu not know when to stop? The other Zodiac guardian god warriors looked at Vol with some pity. Just now, when Vol had pounced forward, his incomparably firm expression had filled their hearts with shock. They all understood that if he really faced an enemy, he would do the same. "Qi Yu, is there something wrong with you?" Tears welled up in Modi's eyes as he stared viciously at Qi Yu. Qi Yu smiled indifferently and said, "This is the result of not being as good as others. Why, you let Vol block my attack for you. Don't you feel lucky?" Modi slowly stood up, and every Zodiac guardian god warrior clearly saw her delicate body slightly trembling. Although the hero saving the damsel in distress was tacky, Vol's completely disregard of life and death to save the damsel in distress was not a show. Only Modi, who had really experienced it, could fully feel the aura that Vol exuded at that moment. The white light became brighter and brighter, and Modi's legs suddenly disappeared. In the air, a fan-shaped light and shadow, with countless attacks, rushed towards Qi Yu's body. Of course, everyone knew the ending, but no one would stop it, because everyone knew that Qi Yu was doing it for their own good. Modi's attack broke out like never before. Perhaps because of Vol at this time, she actually exerted 120% of her combat power. Surprisingly, Chiyu did not attack Modi, nor did she fight back. She just activated Kiran's mirror and formed a layer of barrier around her body, allowing Modi to attack violently, and with the help of Kiran's mirror, she blocked all of her spring-like legs. When a woman goes berserk, she is absolutely terrifying. Dense roars like drums constantly came from around Chiyu's body, although everyone knew that it was impossible for Modi to hurt Chiyu. Looking at her crazy attack, everyone couldn't help but be secretly shocked. There was naturally a reason why Chiyu did not fight back. First, he wanted to release the resentment in Modi's heart. Only then would it be good for her body. Secondly, as she continued to attack, her gratitude towards Vol would continue to be magnified. Explosive attacks consumed a lot of energy, and when she was exhausted, it was almost the same as being heavily injured. Although he had a plan, Modi's determination still surprised Chiyu. Her attacks did not show any signs of slowing down. Even if her thundercloud force was about to be exhausted, her attacks actually became fiercer and fiercer. Chiyu understood that Modi was about to overdraft herself to attack. This situation was naturally not what he wanted to see. Enough! Kiran's mirror waved, and the thundercloud force exploded, causing Modi to fly 10 meters away. Modi, who had just entered the 5-cloud level, was after all not on the same level as Chiyu, especially when her mind was already restricted by grief. There was no order to speak of at all. Seeing that Modi was about to attack again, Chiyu hurriedly said, "If you continue to attack, Vol will not be able to be saved." Modi was stunned for a moment. Her red eyes showed a slight trace of confusion, but her anger clearly had not disappeared. "You still care about his life and death? If that's the case, why did you attack so heavily?" Chiyu helplessly shook his head and said, "When a woman goes crazy, she is indeed scarier than a man. My attack calculation is very accurate, but I didn't expect Vol to care so much about you. From now on, treat him better, and that will be your repayment. Sit down. I will let you understand why you are doing this." 2 people were obviously much easier to modify than 7 people. When the sun moved to the middle of the day, Chiyu's modification of Modi and Vol was completed. Field Mouse was the same as Yen Xiaoi. They were both at the 3 clouds level. The lower one's strength was, the greater the benefits from the transformation. Moreover, Field Mouse's injuries were more serious than the others. This allowed his meridians to receive more natural energy during the modification process. Tiredly standing up, Chiyu already felt that his eyes were a little blurry. After all, even if he was an Iron Man, his body would not be able to withstand such continuous consumption. This was even with Wenting's help. Otherwise, he might not even be able to last night. Ruyue and Ming Ming each held one of Chiyu's arms. Chiyu shook his head and said, "I'm fine." "Hey, why are you all still here? Don't you understand that time is running out? All of you, go back to your rooms and cultivate." His words sounded a little rude, but at this time all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors felt a kind of sincere feeling in their hearts. Chiyu not only conquered them with strength, but also unreserved dedication. That energy transformation consumed a huge amount of energy. However, he persevered and changed everyone once. In the hearts of all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors, at this time, Chiyu had become the real king among them, the unquestionable king. Everyone went back to their rooms with a happy mood. Chiyu comfortably put his arms on Ming Ming and Ruyue's shoulders. At this time, his expression relaxed. The first thing after returning was finally completed. After the modification of natural energy, everyone's physical ability had been greatly improved. What they felt was only a part of the benefits. As they continued to cultivate in the future, their feelings would become more and more profound. Modi woke up a little earlier than Vol and felt the changes in her body. Her eyes were a little dull, and she looked up at Chiyu, who was smiling faintly, and her pretty face couldn't help but blush. "Last night we were the same, not to mention Vol. Even me and Ming Ming, that bad guy, were not spared." Ruyue smiled and went forward to pull Modi up. Modi looked at Vol on the ground, lowered her head, and asked, Is he okay? A trace of slyness flashed in Chi Yu's eyes. He sighed and said, Originally, according to my plan, he should be fine. But who knew that this good brother of mine was so stupid? His injury is too serious. What? Could it be that Vol's injury can't be healed? Modi was shocked. Looking at Chi Yu, her eyes turned red again. Chi Yu secretly thought that there was a way. Modi's character was gentle and persevering. It was impossible to persuade her. Only real action could gradually move her heart. No. How can I let my good brother not recover? Don't worry. Modi heaved a sigh of relief. Thank you. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. Chi Yu shook her head. There's no need to apologize, but Sister Modi, I still need your help. Modi was stunned. Help? Say it. We're all on the same side. It's what I should do. Chi Yu combed the hair that blocked his view to the back of his head, smiled and said, It's not that I need your help, but Vol. You also saw it. His previous injury was very serious, and he lost a lot of blood. So, although the injury has been cured by me, his vitality has been damaged. He must be carefully looked after to recover. So, I want you to help me take care of him for a few days. Modi didn't even hesitate and agreed. This is what I should do. Vol was injured because of me. I'm his teacher and friend. Naturally, I should take care of him. Chi Yu knew that matters of the heart couldn't be rushed. He nodded and said, I've carefully examined his body. It will take about 7 days to recover. Among the Zodiac warriors, your energy is the most gentle. It's very suitable to help him recover. In these 7 days, you not only need to take care of his daily life. At the same time, when you practice, you need to input your own thundercloud force into his body, and then introduce his thundercloud force. Through the combination of thundercloud force, you can better help him consolidate his vitality. Modi hesitated for a moment and said, But each of us has a different cultivation method. Will there be a problem? Chi Yu said, Don't worry. Of course we can't, but our Zodiac guardian god warriors practice the ascending cloud art as the foundation. In terms of origin, it's the same. This time, after I used natural energy to transform it, everyone's energy has a common characteristic. Although practicing at the same time won't increase the effect of practice, it's a good choice to help Vol recover his vitality. Do as I say, and I promise to return you a healthy Vol. Modi finally showed a trace of a smile on his face, nodded, and said, I will take good care of him. Modi, be careful. Vol, who was still sitting cross-legged, suddenly exclaimed and jumped up from the ground. His thundercloud force was far from recovering, so he suddenly lost his balance and fell to the side. Modi was the closest to Vol, so he quickly held his chubby body and helped him stabilize. Be careful, I'm here. Vol slowly recovered, his eyes gradually focused. When he saw that Modi was next to him, he suddenly said in surprise, Modi, are you okay? That's great. Usually he called Modi teacher, but now he suddenly omitted the word teacher, but it didn't attract Modi's attention. Chi Yu secretly laughed in his heart, who said that Vol brothers don't know how to chase girls. As long as Modi isn't a stone girl, it's impossible for her not to be touched. Feeling Vol's true feelings, Modi's eyes flashed with a light of struggle, but she quickly recovered. Vol, why are you so stupid? Fortunately, Chi Yu withdrew part of the attack in time. Otherwise. Vol smiled, scratched his head, and said, I didn't think that much. I just felt that boss's attack was a bit fierce. I was afraid that you would be hurt more, so... Hey! Why does my body seem to be much lighter? Ah, my meridians have also become wider. What's going on? Chi Yu smiled and said, Silly boy, I helped you change your meridians. Otherwise, why do you think I attacked you? Vol laughed and said, I knew boss wouldn't really want to hurt us. It's so cool. It seems that I'm not far from the 4 clouds. He didn't notice that because Modi had just supported him, he, who was a head shorter than Modi, still had his hands around Modi's waist. At this time, the doorbell of the courtyard suddenly rang. Jeed had been guarding at the door, and when everyone woke up, they went back to the villa to sleep. Chiyu said with some doubt, "It's noon, who would come?" "Ming Ming, you go and see." Ming Ming agreed, went to the door, and opened it. The Dragon Field courtyard was full of Zodiac guardian warriors. She naturally wouldn't be afraid of some blind guy robbing her. The door opened. Today, Chiyu was surprised to see a woman. No, it should be a girl walking in from outside. Furthermore, she was a very peculiar girl, one that couldn't be any more peculiar. Seeing this girl, Vol couldn't help but change his expression. I'll go back to my room first." At this time, his short and thick legs displayed a very strong running ability, and in just a few exertions he ran back to the villa. "Vol, wait for me." Modi remembered Chiyu's warning and hurriedly chased after him. At this time, Chiyu didn't even notice Vol's voice. His attention was completely focused on the girl who suddenly appeared, because she was really too strange. She was about the same height as a vole, but her body was twice as thick as a vole's. Standing there, she was definitely a standard globe. Her hair was short, if not for the pair of plump breasts in front of her. With a face full of fat, it was hard to recognize her as a female. Her thick limbs looked very inflexible, especially when she walked. That appearance, it was as strange as it could be. On her face was a pair of glasses, a pair of small eyes. Because of the fat, it was impossible to see clearly, as if there were only 2 meat slits. Chiyu stared dumbfoundedly at the earth globe moving towards him. An ear-piercing roar came from the earth globe's mouth. "Bo Guang, don't run. Wait for me." Only then did Chiyu understand why Vol wanted to run. The female sphere in front of him was really a bit scary. As the so-called ugly is not your fault, but it is your fault to come out and scare people. As the boss of Vol, he took a step forward and blocked the way of the fat girl. "Hello, may I ask who are you?" Chiyu said very politely. The fat girl's huge body almost hit him, but fortunately, she stopped at the last moment. She gasped and stared at Chiyu. "Who the hell are you? Why haven't I seen you before?" Not only was this girl fat, but she was also very dark. The skin on her face looked really scary. Even Chiyu could not tell her age. Hearing her question, Chiyu could not help but be stunned. "Little fatso, this is a private place. I think I have the right to ask you to leave at any time." The fat girl did not care about what Chiyu said. She raised her right fist and gestured at him. "What, not convinced? Do you believe that I won't beat you up?" This time, not only Chiyu laughed. Even Ming Ming and Ruyue, who were next to him, laughed. Ruyue smiled. "All right, Dan, stop fooling around. Why are you looking for Vol?" Hearing Ryue's question, the arrogance on the fat girl's face disappeared. She pinched the corner of her clothes with both hands and said shyly, "I haven't seen him for a few days. I kind of miss him. Also, Sister Ruyue, didn't you say that I can move here at any time? Bo Guang moved here from his home, so I have to move here too. Is that okay?" Ruyue resisted the urge to burst out laughing. "Yes, of course you can. You're one of us." Chiyu said in a daze, "I say, girl, don't tell me you like Vol. He is still very young. You can't destroy the flower of the motherland." "Bullshit. What young? You are the one who is young. I am in the same class as Bo Guang. Do you think I don't know how old he is? Do I need you to tell me? This old lady here is 1 year younger than him." The moment the plump lady faced Chiyu, she immediately became aggressive. Chiyu looked at her, dumbfounded, and said, "What? You are younger than him? That means you are only 15 years old. Oh my God. To be able to eat like this at 15 years old, that was too strong. Even if this fat girl did not weigh 300 pounds, she was probably at least 250 pounds. Powerful, truly too powerful. Ruyue, aren't you going to introduce me? Why haven't I seen her before?" Ruyue smiled as she came to Chiyu's side and said, "Let me introduce you. This girl is Modi's cousin and also Xiao Yi's cousin. Speaking of which, she is also from the same branch. She is in the same class as Vol. Her surname is M.O., and her name is M.O. Dan. What's her name? Touch the balls? F***CK, that's too strong. I'll kick you to death. M.O. Dan suddenly raised her short but powerful leg and kicked Chi Yu's waist. With Chi Yu's agility, he naturally would not be hit. His body moved slightly to the side, and he easily dodged her attack, but he could not help but be surprised. She has an energy aura on her. Could it be? Ryue smiled and said, "That's right, you guessed it. Modi's family is really strong. One family with 3 zodiac signs. I didn't have time to say, but Whitey is the cow zodiac sign. Master Zagru found it when she was looking for Vol. He had already helped her wake up. Now she is a 1-cloud level practitioner. Oh my god, the cow zodiac sign is like this." Chi Yu could not help but glance at M.O. Dan's huge chest. He thought to himself, "Isn't this a cow?" M.O. Dan raised her head and looked at Chi Yu and said, "How is it? Are you scared?" She was wearing a green village shirt, and she used her 2 fat hands to tug at the super large village shirt and said proudly, "I call myself the indifferent green shirt." Chi laughed and said, "So you are the cow zodiac sign. What's with this indifferent green shirt?" M.O. Dan said proudly, "Because I like to wear green shirts, and with my name on it, it's done. Isn't it cool?" Chi Yu nodded seriously and said, "It's really cool, but when used on a cow, no matter how cool it is, it seems go to hell." M.O. Dan was obviously angered by Chi Yu, and her fat hands reached for his collar. Unfortunately, she was a little short and could not reach. Chapter 172. M.O. Dan was stunned and said, "You? Who are you? Passerby, eh?" Chi Yu snorted and said, "Since you are also one of the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors, then everyone should have told you that there is another Zodiac Guardian Warrior besides the 12 Zodiac Guardian Warriors. That's me." M.O. Dan came to a sudden realization and said, "Oh, so you're that fellow who's obviously not much different from a dog, but insists on using the name of a Qilin. F***CK, Kirin is different from a dog." Chi Yu said angrily. M.O. Dan snorted and said, "I don't see any difference, just a little bigger." Chi Yu shook his head and said, "I'm afraid of you. Cow, why are you looking for Vol?" When M.O. Dan heard Chi Yu mention Vol, she suddenly became a little bashful and said, I am looking for him. By the way, I heard that you are the boss of Vol, Chi Yu, right? Can you help me call him out?" Chi Yu said with a smile, "Why don't you go yourself? Since he is one of us, you can go and call him yourself." However, Vol was injured just now and his vitality was greatly damaged. Now, Modi is bringing him to heal. It's best if you don't disturb them. "What? Bo Guang is injured? Which bastard is it? I want to kill him." M.O. Dan roared angrily. Obviously, her temper was extremely hot. Listening to her words, Ming Ming and Ryue couldn't help but laugh. Chi Yu looked at her a little awkwardly and pointed to himself and said, "I am afraid that the person you want to kill is me, but I am not a bastard." "You?" M.O. Dan looked at Chi Yu doubtfully and said, "You want to beat our Bo Guang? I don't believe it. Our Bo Guang is very powerful. Even a little finger can kill you." Chi Yu shrugged and said, "It's fine if you don't believe me. You're still too weak right now. Let's talk about it when you're stronger." What he meant was, of course, the transformation of his body. M.O. Dan currently only had the strength of a Yun, and most of it was obtained after Master Zagru helped her awaken. Her body had yet to adapt to the power of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Therefore, a period of cultivation was required before the body could be modified. "Did you really hurt our Bo Guang?" M.O. Dan glared at Chi Yu. She suddenly felt that the guy in front of her was getting more and more annoying. Chi Yu nodded and said, "You can ask Ryue and the others. They all watched me do it. Then I'll beat you to death." M.O. Dan's speed suddenly increased. She angrily rushed towards Chi Yu like a calf. Of course, there was no calf in this world that was as heavy as her. In Chi Yu's eyes, She was like a tank rolling over him. He helplessly shook his head and said, "Cow, did you forget that I'm the king of the Zodiac?" As he spoke, Chiyu did not even move. His wind and cloud power automatically spread out and easily blocked Mo Dandinometer in front of him. No matter how hard she tried. She could not break through the barrier. Now Chiyu's mood was very good. Although he had consumed a lot of energy today, he had also helped the 9 Zodiac guardian god warriors transform their bodies. What made him even happier was that he actually found the appearance of the bull Zodiac. In this case, there were only 2 more Zodiac guardian warriors left. Finding all the Zodiac guardian warriors was the second thing that Chiyu had to do as soon as possible after he came back. "You're not allowed to call me a cow. You have to call me in different Qingshan." Mo Dandan roared at Chiyu as he tried his best. "When you can beat me, I'll call you in different green shirt. Otherwise, I'll call you cow. Or do you want me to touch your balls?" Haha. Although Chiyu's ruffian face looked evil, Mo Dandan was no fool. She obviously understood that she was far from being a match for Chiyu. She no longer rushed forward. She angrily snorted and turned to run towards the direction of the villa. Ryua hit Chiyu's shoulder with some dissatisfaction and said, "She's still a little girl. I can't stand seeing you bully her like this. You're so bad calling a girl a cow." Chiyu laughed and said, "But don't you think it's very appropriate? Moreover, it can also stimulate her to practice hard. You can see it from her body shape. This Mo Dan must be very lazy. For someone like her, it's impossible not to stimulate her. However, I am very curious as to why she would like a field mouse. Vol seems to be very afraid of her." Ming Ming chuckled and said, "If you were chased by such a fat girl for a year, I'm afraid you'd be afraid too. I heard from Vol that Mo Dan transferred to his school later, and it seemed that she fell in love with him at first sight. I don't need to say what happened after that. We can all see that Vol's mind is on Sister Modi. He's naturally avoiding Mo Dandan like the plague." Chiyu shook his head helplessly and said, "You're all tired. Go back to your room and rest first. When the thundercloud force recovers, I still have something to say to you." "Then you," Ryue and Ming Ming said at the same time. The 2 girls looked at each other, and their pretty faces suddenly blushed. Chiyu laughed and put his arm around Ming Ming's shoulder. He whispered something in her ear. Ming Ming's eyes suddenly showed a light of surprise. "Really? That's great. You accompany Sister Ryue. I won't bother you guys anymore. I'll go back first." As she said that, she was like a little phoenix flying away. Ryue was stunned. She was a few years older than Ming Ming. Although she was very reluctant, she was ready to make a concession. She didn't expect Ming Ming to run away first. She glared at Chiyu and said, "It's all your fault. You've made me lose my prestige in everyone's hearts." Chiyu hugged Ryue's slender waist and smiled. "As long as I'm here, isn't it enough? What prestige do I need from my dear wife?" Falling into that warm and wide embrace, Ryue's expression naturally softened. "Chiyu, what did you say to Ming Ming just now?" She seemed to be very happy to leave. Chiyu said, "Let's go back to our room first. We've been away for so long. I must accompany you well." Ryue whispered, "But your thundercloud force consumed so much." Chiyu laughed and said, "Do you think this is a problem for me? Moreover, if I was in my full state, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to bear it. You pervert." When the last 2 figures disappeared from the lawn of the Dragonfield courtyard, everything became quiet. However, the exquisite villa in the Dragonfield courtyard was full of energy fluctuations. Zagru chanted the sutra a few times and found that he couldn't calm down at all. Since Chiyu came back last night, his heart couldn't calm down. Chiyu's return not only made the Zodiac guardian god warriors more cohesive, but also greatly improved everyone's strength. Such a powerful Kirin appeared for the first time in the history of the Zodiac guardian god. It was also because of his leadership that all the Zodiac guardian god warriors were likely to become the most powerful generation. A faint smile appeared on the face of this young monk. Everything seemed to be out of the control of fate, but it seemed that there was an arrangement in the unseen world. He knew that his days here had already begun to count down. The high-pitched moans constantly reverberated in this well-soundproofed room. Ruyu unreservedly expressed her inner feelings and intense pleasure. Intense pleasure came from every inch of her body. Sometimes it was hot, and sometimes it was cold, but that extreme pleasure released all the shackles in her heart. Ruyue's body was so beautiful. Looking at her perfect and elastic body, Chiyu's eyes were filled with warmth. His hands constantly stroked her delicate body, and his lower body had already fused with hers. At that time, the union between Dragon and Kirin was also a true fusion. After half a year, after experiencing everything last night, Ruyue finally found the opportunity to release her feelings. She was not stingy with her physical strength at all. She madly catered to Chi-Yu's movements, bringing both of them to the peak of bliss. After a long time, the battle was finally over. Ruyue closed her eyes in satisfaction. She kept murmuring in Chi-Yu's arms. She was too tired. Chi-Yu seemed to have become more powerful than before. She did not know how many times she climbed to that wonderful peak. She finally fell asleep. She did not even know when she fell asleep. With a faint smile, Chi-Yu gently stroked Ryue's smooth back. He infused his natural force into her body, nourishing her body that was overdrawn by his demands. Ever since he had sex with Ryue and Wenting, Chi-Yu now found that a woman could not satisfy his desire at all. Even with Ryue's physique, he still did not release it after she was burned to the peak by his scorching heat. It was not as stimulating as the crystal love and the desert storm. Naturally, he would not hurt Ryue's body to release his desire. When Ryue fell asleep in exhaustion, he immediately stopped his actions. A faint energy, aura, gradually began to move with Chi-Yu and Ryue's body. Just like how Chi-Yu told Modi to help Vol train, he now used his Kirin's thundercloud force to train with the sleeping Ryue. He had to replenish his energy as soon as possible. Otherwise, his strength would not improve. When Ryue woke up from her sleep, she was surprised to find that her thundercloud force had completely recovered, but its volume was much smaller than before. It was not only caused by the expansion of her meridians, but also because her energy was compressed. "You're awake, baby." Chi-Yu patted Ryue's perky butt, the bouncy round, but made him unable to help but need it. Ryue's pretty face blushed, and she pressed her delicate body tightly against Chi-Yu. "Did you help me recover my thundercloud force?" Chi-Yu smiled and said, "If it wasn't for me, would you have recovered so quickly?" "I'm sorry, Chi-Yu. I couldn't satisfy you." Ryue's expression was a little sad. Chi-Yu smiled and comforted. "How can I blame you? It's my body that's too abnormal." Ryue bit her lower lip and said, "Why don't you look for Wenting? Maybe it's possible with her." Chi-Yu shook his head and said, "There's no need for that. Last night when I helped you guys modify your bodies, Wenting transferred all her energy to me. Now I need to cultivate quietly. Now that I've just come back, I still have a lot of things to do. I can't waste my time on that." As he said that, his hands, which were naughtily grabbing breasts, had already quietly attacked Ryue's plump breasts. "Chi-Yu, you've become stronger than before," Ryue said in a daze. Chi-Yu sighed and said, "Stronger? That's only relative. If I hadn't been to the ancient giant beast era, I would never know what true strength is. Ryue, since I've already come back, I have a lot of things to do. You didn't go to work today. Go to the company tomorrow and transfer the money we donated to the All China Women's Federation. I've spent a total of 120 million yuan. As for the remaining money, I need to ask you for a favor." Ryue was stunned and said, "A favor? You still want to do charity?" Chi Yu shook his head and said, if you want to do charity well, you must first have a foundation. I'm not that overconfident. I've already put you in a difficult position this time. I'm afraid it'll be hard for you to explain to the shareholders with 200 million yuan. Give me a year. After a year, I'll definitely return the money to you. As for the remaining money, let's use it as a startup fund. Ruyue looked at him in surprise and said, are you going to do business? That's not like you. Chi Yu smiled and said, but I can't just eat my wife all the time. I'm a man. I have to have my own career, don't I? What's more, I have so many unique conditions. If I can't make a fortune, it can only prove that I'm too weak. Our ruffian is also enterprising. Good. Tell me. I'll help you no matter what. If you need more money, I'll find a way. Most of the shares of Longyu Group are in our hands. You don't need to worry about what the shareholders say. I naturally have a way to solve it. Looking at his lover who supported him unreservedly, Chi Yu felt warm in his heart. This was the feeling of home. Back in the modern world. This was also what he wanted the most. I have a few things that I need your help with. Money is not a problem. The remaining tens of millions of yuan are enough for my startup fund. Please help me register a company to engage in the food and beverage sales industry. At the same time, help me rent a huge warehouse. I think it should be at least 50,000 square meters. If it's not enough, I'll add more later. I want this warehouse to be a warehouse that can be maintained at 0 degrees Celsius, no matter when or what season it is. Ruyue suddenly understood and said, you want a fresh-keeping warehouse, right? Chi smiled and said, yes, a fresh-keeping warehouse, and then prepare some freezers. These are the things I've thought of for the time being. As for the name of the company, I'll call it Kirin. At the same time, I want the right to import the company. I don't know much about this, so I don't know if it's easy. Ruyue thought about it and said, import and export is not a problem. I'll naturally find the right person to handle it. But can you tell me what this company of yours does? Chi smiled and whispered something in Ryue's ear. After listening to his words, Ryue's eyes showed a light of surprise. That works. Chi smiled and said, why not? In today's society, as long as it's something new, nothing is impossible. Think about it carefully. What I want to do is to monopolize the industry. Once I succeed, the profits will expand infinitely. The gentleness in Ryue's eyes disappeared, and the wisdom of a strong woman appeared in her eyes. She thought about it briefly and nodded to Chi Yu and said, it's promising. As long as the marketing is done properly, I think there's more than a 90% chance of success. No, almost a 100% chance. Because you don't have any competitors at all. Chi Yu hugged her delicate body tightly and said with a smile, now you know why I said I'll pay you back in a year. Ruyue nodded and said, of course I believe you. Now I'm thinking, should I ask for more interest from you? Chi Yu smiled and said, what's mine is yours. You can ask for as much as you want. Anyway, I don't have time to manage this company. Most of the matters will be handled by you. How about this? Use my name when you register the company. As for the general manager, I'll let Wen Ting take the position. She and Snow Girl will be the main ones in charge of this company. Although they don't know much about this, I can rest assured with you around. Ruyue smiled and said, then aren't you a hands-off boss? I thought you really want to focus on your career. Chi Yu leaned over and kissed her delicate face. He smiled and said, a man can't be without a career, but a career isn't everything to a man. If I were to compare, you guys are the most important to me. Not to mention that I'm one of the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Do you think I can focus all my energy on my career? Ruyue sighed and said, it's not necessarily a good thing to have great strength. Correspondingly, you have to bear more things than ordinary people. Chi Yu smiled bitterly and said, then I'm also willing to live my current life and not return to the past. Ruyue looked at him and said, why? Sometimes I wonder how good it would be if I was just an ordinary person. That way, I can live a carefree life. I don't need to work, So hard to do everything. As long as I have a man who loves me and a warm family, I will be satisfied. Chi-Yu laughed in spite of himself. That doesn't sound like something a T-Rex would say. The reason why I do not want to return to the previous life. It was because he didn't want to live a mediocre life. In the past, I was just a ruffian, living at the bottom of society. It wouldn't be wrong to say that I was the dregs of society, but now it's different. I have almost everything I want. No matter how much I have to pay, I think it's worth it. If I were still the same as before, how could I have known you? How could I possibly win your heart then? So, compared to what I've lost, I think it's all worth it. Ryua's gaze became gentle. Feeling the heat emitted from Chi-Yu's body, her body gradually softened. She reached back and held Chi-Yu's still high-spirited lower body. Her charming eyes were like silk as she said, "Do you want me to help you?" Don't tell me you still have jelly. Annoying, don't mention it. That time was your birthday. How good it would be if I could celebrate my birthday every day. You, baby, be gentle, A comfortable feeling spread throughout his body in an instant. All his thoughts were completely blank at this moment. That warm little mouth swallowed everything in his heart. Although it was Chi-Yu's one side, looking at such a beautiful T-Rex's alluring appearance under Baiji's body, that satisfaction made Chi-Yu fall into a state of confusion. When the storm quietly disappeared again, Ryua's breathing had become very rapid. Beside Chi-Yu, her emotions were always easily provoked. If it wasn't for the fact that her body couldn't handle it, perhaps she, gently caressing Ryua's alluring back and buttocks, Chi-Yu sighed and said, "Ryua, there are still a few things that I need your help with." Ryua looked at Chi-Yu with a confused look and said, "What is it? Say it." "Ryua, do you know? Since I was young, what I wanted the most was a family. And now, you have given me the feeling of my family. However, our family is not complete. When I was immersed in the illusion of the Xianyuan sword during the era of the ancient beasts, I saw some of what happened to me when I was young. I finally knew that I wasn't abandoned by my parents." He slowly told her everything he had seen at that time. Every time he recalled his mother's mournful cries, his heart would ache. "I understand now. Don't worry, although the search area is still very large. I will do my best to help you find them. Moreover, there is Hu Guang's intelligence network. As long as we expand the search area to the whole world, we will definitely find something. After all, there is a certain range of self-made businessmen between the ages of 40 and 50. The light in Chi-Yu's eyes flickered a little. "There is no need to thank me between us. This is my biggest wish now." Ryua nodded and said, "No matter what, I have to help you. After all, they are also my parents-in-law. However, Chi-Yu, have you thought about how to deal with the matter between me, Mingming, and Wenting? To put it in a selfish way, each of us wants to be loved by you alone, but because of your body, this is obviously not possible. However, you have to understand, we were born in a society with the law, not the era of the ancient beasts. According to the law, only one of us can be your legal wife. Isn't that right? Taking a step back, perhaps Wenting's side is easier to deal with. After all, she is an orphan. However, Mingming's father is a general in the Yanhuang Republic. My parents only have me as their daughter. Even if there is nothing between us, how should we deal with our families? Do you want us to live like this for the rest of our lives?" After listening to Ryua's words, Chi-Yu's heart couldn't help but tremble a little. All along, it wasn't that he hadn't thought about this problem, but every time he thought about it, he would try his best to avoid it in his heart. Indeed, this matter was very difficult to deal with. If it wasn't handled well, it might cause an inextricable predicament. "Ryua, I really don't know what to do." Chi-Yu lowered his head. This wasn't a problem that could be solved just by thinking. Ryua chuckled and said, Actually, I have already thought about it for you. However, this matter might not necessarily succeed, but this is the only normal way." Chi-Yu was stunned and said, "Have you thought about it?" Do you have a way for me to marry a few wives at once? Ryue smiled mysteriously and said, I can't tell you now. Wait until you have convinced Ming Ming and Wenting. After all, this isn't a simple matter. Chiyu felt a little itchy and said, All right, Ryue, just tell me. Ryue smiled and said, It's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's not time yet. Just wait. Leave this matter to me. After all, I am the oldest. I just hope that your best wife can help you deal with some matters that are within her capabilities. Ryue. Looking at her charming face, Chiyu really didn't know what to say. Such an outstanding girl was actually willing to give up so much for him. How could he not be touched? Ryue smiled and said, All right, go on. What else do you need my help with? With Ryue's guarantee in that aspect, Chiyu's heart instantly became lively again. His eyes flashed, and he said, The other thing is that I need you to urge everyone to train hard. As you can see, although our Zodiac Guardian God Warriors have a certain level of strength now, and their main combat strength is above the 5-cloud level. However, among us, there are also some who are weaker. For example, Vol and Little E are only 3-cloud, and that new cow is only 1 cloud. There are a total of 13 Zodiac Guardian God Warriors, including me. Only when everyone has enough strength can we fully unleash our power. As the strongest other than me, it's very important to urge everyone to train. After I help you modify your bodies this time, training will be relatively easier. But everyone's strength is closely related to hard work. The more you put in, the more you can get. Ryue looked at him strangely and said, You seem to be able to do this too. You saw it this morning. Everyone is looking at you differently now. Although you're the youngest among us, your prestige has already surpassed mine. Do you still need me to urge you? Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, This is the third thing I want to tell you. Do you remember what I said to Mingming before, and then she left? Ryue nodded and said, I know. Speaking of which, you're really something. No matter what, I'm a few years older than Mingming. You finally came back and have been accompanying me since last night. It's time for you to accompany Mingming. Mingming's longing for you in this half a year is definitely not below mine. I often see her secretly crying because she misses you. Didn't you notice that she's thinner than before? Chiyu was silent for a while before saying, Ryue, I'm sorry. I have to trouble you. I'm making the best use of my time to accompany you because I'll be leaving again soon. But you have to stay. Hearing this, Ryue suddenly sat up from Chiyu's arms, and her face suddenly became a little ugly. You still want to leave? Haven't you made me worry enough? Chiyu pulled her back into his arms again. Ryue, listen to me. I have to leave. This time is different. Do you remember my agreement with Yamu in Greece? We've already postponed the agreement for more than half a year. Mingming has already started her summer vacation, and it's time for me to go to Athens to keep the appointment. It's because I told Mingming that I'm taking her to Athens that she happily gave me to you first. Lowering her head, Ryue's voice became a little sad. Can you not go? Chiyu didn't answer. He gently kissed the corner of her hair and said softly, This time, I'm not going to Greece just for Mingming. You've seen it. Athena and her 12 constellation guardians are definitely not weaker than us, the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. I heard from Master Zagru that she didn't seem to use her full strength when dealing with Chino. As the successor of the goddess of war and wisdom, although she also belongs to the side of justice on the surface, the East and the West are after all different. Maybe she will become my biggest enemy in this world. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will always be victorious. So, I have to go to Greece, just like Yamu came to our Yanhuang Republic to find out the opponent's background and the strength of her constellation guardians. These are all things I have to do. Moreover, I have to go to the West on the way. Do you remember Su Qing? She went to Europe with vampire Prince Klinsman, and I don't know how she is now. Moreover, Snowgirl's father is likely to be captured by the Covenant of Darkness. Last time, because of Wen Ting's giant beast relic, the Covenant of Darkness, and the Vatican gave us very good gifts. If it weren't for them, how could we have separated? This time, I also want to teach them a lesson, to let them know that the Eastern Guardian of the Yanhuang Republic is not so easy to bully. At this point, Qi Yu's eyes had become cold, and an invisible aura was emitted. Even Ruyue, who was in his arms, couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 173. Qi Yu said, Ruyue, after returning from the ancient behemoth era, I feel that if we want to further improve our strength, or to fully display our strength, then we must take the path of the domain. The path of the domain? Ruyue looked at him with some surprise. Qi Yu nodded firmly and said confidently, That's right, we must take the path of the domain. You should have a deep impression of the battle last night. When the battle reached the end, you should have a deep impression of the fact that it was only one night of battle after all. When the battle reached the end, I was only one person and relying on my own strength to be exhausted by so many experts. I would eventually lose. But with the help of the 1,000 transformation, 4 stars realm technique, I defeated all of you effortlessly. Don't you understand something from this? During the ancient behemoth era, I originally didn't have the ability to obtain the Shenyuan sword, but I relied on the energy immunity domain that I obtained from killing the green phosphorus tree, splitting lizard, and the silver dragon shield, which was able to restrain Huang Emperor in his soul form and thus overcome the difficult situation. It can be said that the 2 domains that I possess now are the most important factors that allowed me to come back alive. Although I don't know whether this kind of domain ability is only available to us guardians of the East. But it is completely conceivable that the experts in other parts of the world all have different special abilities, and if we want to compete with them, we must strengthen ourselves. And the domain is a very special ability. Some need to rely on some special tools, such as divine weapons, like my 1,000 transformation, 4 stars realm technique. There are also some that rely on the special resonance of energy within a certain range to produce a mutated effect, such as my silver dragon shield. But no matter what kind of domain it is very important to improve our strength. You now have the strength of the 7 clouds, but your attack methods can't be limited to the 18 dragon leaping strikes. You still need to develop, and creating your own domain is your best path of development. Ruyue nodded in agreement. The magic of the 1,000 transformation, 4 stars realm technique had indeed left an extremely deep impression on her. Then what should I do to have my own domain? Qi Yu said, It's hard to have your own domain, but it's not difficult. I've discussed this issue with the divine beast king of the ancient beasts. He told me that it was possible for any divine beast to discover their own domain. As for the law of creation, it was very simple. One just had to think. Thinking about the essence of one's own energy would cause one's own energy to resonate. In the resonance, the energy underwent a subtle change. It was the key to opening the door of the domain. Our Zodiac guardian god warriors can be said to have inherited the bloodline of ancient beasts. Therefore, we will definitely have the ability to activate domains. You're already very strong, so let's start with you. As long as one of them succeeded, then everything becomes easier. Ruyue nodded and said, I will try my best. Qi Yu, when are you leaving? When she asked this question, her eyes were filled with reluctance. That delicate and pitiful look didn't have the slightest trace of a Tyrannosaurus Rex's aura. Gently stroking Ryue's long hair, Qi Yu said softly, Don't worry, I won't leave immediately. Tomorrow I will contact Yamu and set a date to go to Greece. But I have to stay for at least 10 days. Because before I leave, I have to do something very important. That is to gather all our Zodiac guardian gods. After becoming the origin of nature, my spiritual force has been magnified by hundreds of times. In this case, using my spiritual force to find the Zodiac guardian gods has become much easier than before. If it's just searching, I think my spiritual force can even cover the entire capital. In this case, I think it won't take long to find the last 2 Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Didn't Grandmaster say that only when all of us are gathered together can the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors exert their greatest power? So before I leave, I must find them. In this way, during the time I'm away, they will have a certain amount of strength. Ryua nodded and said with a smile, "Thank you for being so thoughtful. But you can leave, but you must promise me 2 things. Chiyu said, "Let alone 2. Even if you want 100, I still can't refuse. Who asked you to be my dear wife? Come, have a fragrant kiss." Ryue used her hand to block Chiyu's big mouth. "You're so annoying. I'm talking to you about serious matters. Don't be so frivolous. After you leave, I will go and do the things you asked me to do. But this time, you can't play the game of disappearing. You need to call me every day. Otherwise, I will immediately take everyone to Greece to find you." Chiyu put on a pitiful look and said, "Honey, overseas calls are very expensive." Ryue giggled and said, "It's okay. Just deduct it from your company's profits in the future. It's Kirin Group, after all. With such a grand name, why would they care about a few phone calls?" Chiyu raised his hands and said, Fine, I surrender, okay? I'll do it." Ryue said with some pride, "That's more like it. The second thing, this time you can't leave for more than a month. I don't want to wait anxiously for you to come back for a long time." Chiyu frowned and said, "I'm afraid that will be very difficult. A month's time is too tight, and I can't tell what I will encounter this time. If there is something I need to deal with, it will inevitably be delayed. How about this, in at least a month, at most 3 months, I will definitely come back. Even if there is something I have not finished by then, I will definitely rush back to see my baby Ryue in 3 months. Is that okay?" Ryue thought about it and said reluctantly, "All right then, you can't be up for more than 3 months at most." Chiyu laughed and said, "That won't happen. I have a good wife at home. How can I bear to not come back?" Ryue curled her lips and said, "You scoundrel, hooligan. Maybe you will come back after picking up a foreign girl outside." Chiyu smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, do you think I would dare to? I can't even handle these tigresses at home, let alone foreign girls." Ryue raised her delicate brows and said, "Who are you calling tigresses? All right, I will tell Wen Ting and Ming Ming later. I was wrong. I wasn't talking about you guys. Actually, Ryue, don't you think tigers are very beautiful? Tigers are very beautiful. Then why don't you go find Su Dong? What do you need us for?" Chiyu was suddenly at a loss for words. I did not come down from Bebe Mountain. All right, my dear wife, I have agreed to what you said. Is that not enough? I promise to call back every day, and I will definitely come back within 3 months. Ryue said with a smile, "You can count on it. Chiyu, if you encounter any danger outside, you must inform us as soon as possible. You must inform us as soon as possible." Chiyu said with a smile, "How can there be so many dangers? All right, you must be tired. Go and sleep for a while. I should also start working hard to find them. I wonder what the last 2 Zodiac Guardian Warriors will be like. Please don't surprise me like the cows." Ryu giggled and said, "Can't you watch your mouth? How did Miss Whitey provoke you? You always say bad things about her." Chiyu said with a wry smile, "She didn't provoke me, but she did scare me a little. Poor Vol. This brother can't help you this time. You have to do as you see fit. Cow, what indifferent green robes, and such a boorish temperament. I have to say I'm impressed." Ryue said with a smile, "Our generation's Zodiac Guardian Warriors have already deviated from the right track, and this first one seems to have started from someone. It seems to have started from a certain someone." As she spoke, she used her slender finger to point at Chiyu's chest. With the ruffian Kirin as the king of the Zodiac, then it's not strange to have some special Zodiac Guardian Warriors. Chiyu thought about himself, then thought about others, and couldn't help but laugh. "Yes, we're all the best. You're the best beauty, and I'm the best ruffian. Su Dong is the best sissy, Ian and Huguang are the best wretched, and with this new top-quality cow, God really cares for us. Gently caressing Ryue's delicate body, Chiyu adjusted the thundercloud force to its most gentle state. Under the touch of his warm big hand, Ryue finally couldn't resist the attack of tiredness and fell into a deep sleep. At this time, the sun of the next morning had already risen. Carefully getting down from the bed, Chiyu pulled the quilt for Ryue and then quietly left the room. After the battle with Ryue, not only did he not feel tired, but he was also full of energy. The thundercloud force in his body had also recovered a lot. As the source of nature, in terms of energy recovery speed, perhaps in this world, even Yamu couldn't compare to him. Chiyu came to Master Zagru's door, and before he could knock, Zagru's gentle voice came from the door. "Come in. I've been waiting for you." Entering the door, Chiyu walked into Zagru's room. Zagru's room could be said to be the simplest room in Dragonfield Courtyard. It wasn't that it was originally simple, but when he moved in, he asked Ryue to let people move out all the decorations in the room, leaving only some necessities. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Zagru was chanting in a low voice. Chiyu didn't disturb him, so he pulled a chair and sat down. With his current cultivation, he didn't need to deliberately do it. As long as he could calm his mind, he could naturally enter a state of semi-cultivation. Zagru's chanting was very low, but also very pleasing to the ear. Naturally, Chiyu couldn't understand the Buddhist scriptures, but listening to Zagru's chanting, his heart became abnormally calm. Although Zagru was not much older than him, Chiyu still respected him the most. Chiyu didn't know how much time had passed, but when the sky outside was completely bright, Zagru's chanting finally stopped. "I've made you wait for a long time. This is my daily morning practice." Zagru's voice was always so unhurried, and his gentle eyes looked at Chiyu. Chiyu couldn't help but think of Buddha's smiling face in Saint Buddha Temple. "Great Master, don't you have anything to ask me?" Chiyu asked. Zagru put his palms together. "Amitabha is there? Worldly matters have nothing to do with me, but I've seen too much, so I have something to rely on. Everyone has been waiting for you to come back. You finally come back. That's the best explanation. There are a lot of things that don't need to be asked. The answer is already clear, isn't it?" Chiyu said with a bitter smile, "Great Master, can you not speak in such a genteel manner? It sounds really awkward to me." Zagru laughed. "You still can't change that ruffian habit of yours. To be honest, Chiyu, ever since I inherited the Buddhist power of my ancestors, I've been working hard to study the Dharma, hoping to inherit the wishes of the ancestors and spread the Dharma to further places. From then on, I've been very accurate in judging people. There are very few people that I've misjudged. However, I have to admit that I've misjudged you." Chiyu chuckled. "Great Master, you want to praise me, right? Say it quickly. I love to hear people praise me. Especially you." Zagru shook his head helplessly. "You ruffian. I really don't know what to do with you. But it's you who changed the Zodiac Guardian Warriors. In just over a year, you've undergone earth-shattering changes. From an ordinary person, you've become the strongest amongst the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. This is almost unimaginable to me, but you've really done it. All of this can be said to be an opportunity. That's why I said that I've misjudged you. I understand why you came to me today. You don't need to say anything. Just do what you want to do. I'm a heavenly guide, but not a Zodiac Guardian Warrior. What they need is your leadership, not me. I think it's also time for me to go back." Chiyu was stunned. "Great Master, are you leaving?" Zagru nodded, then shook his head. "Yes, I'm leaving, but not now. The moment you come back, it's time for me to leave." Chiyu was surprised. "Great Master knows that I'm leaving?" Zagru smiled. "Why wouldn't I know?" He shook his head helplessly. "Great Master, why do I feel that you're more and more like a swindler?" Zagru put his palms together. "Amitabha, I've sinned. Go, do what you need to do." Early in the morning, while flying in the air, Chiyu felt that his improvement in strength made him full of the feeling of being able to do as he pleased. Relying on the water thundercloud force to protect his body, he completely simulated the aura around his body to look like a cloud. Even radar couldn't detect his identity, not to mention he was flying at a low altitude. With his soaring speed, ordinary people couldn't even see him clearly, so he naturally didn't need to worry about any trouble. While flying, Chiyu's heart was filled with excitement. He didn't expect everything to go so smoothly. After saying goodbye to Zagru, he returned to his room, and with the full activation of his spiritual power, he used his spiritual power to further improve his strength, and used his spiritual power to envelop the entire capital within the range of his spiritual power. Although doing so only allowed him to sense the aura of the capital vaguely, and even to the extent that it was just a virtual image in his mind. Just sensing the aura was enough to give him a huge surprise. This was because, through sensing the aura, Chiyu actually successfully found the aura that he wanted to find the most in the capital. Originally, Chiyu estimated that he would be satisfied as long as he found one, but he was excited to find that. The two auras that he wanted to find were actually both in the capital. Perhaps this was the situation that Great Master Zagru mentioned, that the Zodiac Guardian Warriors would lean towards the Zodiac King, Kirin. That's right, with the fluctuations of his spiritual power, Chiyu found the aura of the last two Zodiac Guardian Warriors in the capital at the same time. Zodiac Horse Warrior, Zodiac Pig Warrior. What kind of surprise will you give me? Although the discovery of the two Zodiac Guardian Warriors made Chiyu very happy, he did not immediately go to find them. Instead, he flew alone in the direction of the northwest suburbs of the capital. Since he was already back, Chiyu naturally wanted to find his treasure. The Audi Q7 had been placed by the National Highway for half a year, and he did not know if it could still be started. Far away, Chiyu had already seen his treasure car, but the original silver body had now turned into a yellow color. The entire car was completely surrounded by a layer of yellow soil, and the original domineering and bright body of the car could not be seen at all. With a smile, Chiyu floated to the side of the Audi Q7. Not caring about the dirt, he reached out and patted the body of the car, muttering to himself, "Brother, I've kept you waiting. I'll bring you home now, but you must be able to start it." Although he said so, Chiyu did not have much hope in his heart. After all, it had not been started for half a year, and he was afraid that the battery had already been exhausted. He stretched out his hands, and a blue light was clearly condensed from the surroundings towards Chiyu. At this time, there were no cars on the national highway. Chiyu expanded his spiritual power, and when he was sure that everyone could see his actions, two strong water mists had already erupted from his hands, washing the behemoth-like body of the Audi Q7. Perhaps only a guy like Chiyu, who was not afraid of consumption, could use thundercloud force to wash a car, although the water thundercloud force was of the water attribute. It was not real water, but energy. Forcibly condensing the water molecules in the air for his own use consumed a lot of his energy. However, our ruffian Kirin did not care at all. With the characteristics of the source of nature, his recovery speed was not much slower than the consumption. The dark clouds parted to reveal the bright moon. When the silver silhouette reappeared in front of Chiyu, a feeling of satisfaction arose from the bottom of Chiyu's heart. He was a man, after all. How could he not be excited? He tried to open the door with the remote control key. It worked. Chiyu first opened the 4 doors, because it was a new car. Coupled with the fact that it had been sealed for half a year, the air in the car was certainly not good. When the door opened, immediately, a mixed smell of plastic and leather hit his face. But the quality of the Audi was still good, and the smell was released in a moment. Chiyu closed the door, sat in the driver's seat, and turned the key. With a low hum, the car actually started. Perhaps because it had been placed for a long time, the car was slightly shaking. It still had electricity after half a year? Chiyu looked at the shining dashboard in amazement. However, he quickly realized that the reason the car still had electricity wasn't because of the battery, but because of the solar-powered sunroof on the car's roof. It relied on the solar-powered sunroof to keep the car running. Turning the car around, in the low roar of the engine, Chi-Yu drove his precious car to the downtown area of the capital. The reason why he came to find a car first was to get his precious car back, and to drive the car to find the last two Zodiac guardian warriors. Originally, Chi-Yu planned to take Ryue out with him, so that he could spend more time with her before he went to Greece. But Ryue was really too tired and needed to rest. After that, she had to remit the money needed for yesterday's auction to the All China Women's Federation. Such a large amount of money had to be handled by her. And Ming and Wen Ting were also practicing, so he had to come alone. As one with the car, Chi-Yu felt like a fish in water. Under the control of Chi-Yu's keen senses, he quickly entered the highway and drove back into the city. Through the feeling of his spiritual power, he found that the last two Zodiac guardian warriors were both in the downtown area. One was near the North Third Ring Road, and the other was in the opposite direction. Since he came back from the northwestern suburbs, Chi-Yu decided to go to the North Third Ring Road first. About half an hour later, Chi-Yu had entered the North Third Ring Road through the Badaling Highway. As soon as he entered the North Third Ring Road, he spread out his spiritual power while driving. At this time, the area that he needed to perceive was greatly reduced, so his accuracy was relatively higher. Just as he had felt before, at this time, the Zodiac Guardian Warrior was already very close to him. He drove from the highway to the South Third Ring Road. The drawback of the capital was the traffic jam. It was the rush hour in the morning. It felt like the speed of driving was not even as fast as walking. However, Chi-Yu was currently in a good mood and was not in a hurry. He slowly drove along with the flow of traffic while using his mental strength to lock onto the Zodiac Warrior's specific location. This way, even if he changed his position, he would not be able to detect it. In this way, even if he changed his position, he could still be locked on by Chi-Yu's spiritual power. While driving, a beautiful sports car attracted Chi-Yu's attention. He was always very sensitive to cars. It was a Porsche 911 sports car. Although Chi-Yu's love for sports cars was limited, he was very clear that although this sports car looked very small, it definitely had a surging heart. Its power was much more powerful than his Audi Q7. Although it was far from Ryue's Lamborghini LP 460, it was still quite good. The sports car was red, Chi-Yu thought to himself. The person who drove such a sports car should be a girl, and the probability of it being a beautiful girl was very high. Anyway, he was stuck in a traffic jam. He subconsciously moved closer to it. As a man, he instinctively looked through the window at the Porsche 911. The Porsche originally had a very dark color car membrane, but with the penetrating power of Chi-Yu's eyes, he could still easily see the situation inside the car. His judgment was correct. The driver was a beautiful girl, and to his surprise, he actually knew this beautiful girl. It was the singer Xiao Lu that he and Ryue met at the charity auction. She was wearing a simple black dress. Her black hair was combed into a ponytail, and her long hair was hanging on her shoulders. Her white lotus-like arm was gently holding the steering wheel, and she was leisurely looking ahead. For Xiao Lu, Chi-Yu still had a very deep impression. After all, this level of beauty was probably even rarer than the number of pandas. He opened his window and waved at the Porsche that Xiao Lu was driving. "Miss Xiao Lu, what a coincidence!" The sudden voice startled Xiao Lu, and she couldn't help but feel a little strange in her heart. When did her Porsche's soundproofing become so bad? She looked through the window in the direction of the voice and saw Chi-Yu's smiling face. She also rolled down the window on Chi-Yu's side and smiled. "That's right. What a coincidence. Hello, Mr. Chi." Chi-Yu smiled and said, "Miss Xiao Lu, it's rare for stars to get up so early like you, right? Where are you going?" For some reason, even though Chi-Yu had asked about his privacy, Xiao Lu did not feel any disgust in his heart. Looking at the genial smile on his not-so-handsome face, Xiao Lu unwittingly felt a sense of closeness. He asked in return, "What about you? Isn't CEO Hai with you? Chi Yu said, she's very busy. It just so happens that I have something to do, so we're not together. I don't know if it's fate for us to meet here. Xiao Lu smiled and said, Mr. Chi, you should drive carefully. At this time, the originally slow traffic began to move slowly. Because they were in different lanes, Xiao Lu's Porsche had slowly overtaken Chi Yu's car, and they were no longer side by side. Chi Yu thought in his heart, it's not early or late. Just when I was chatting with the beauty, the traffic suddenly became better. Forget it. In any case, he didn't have any other thoughts. Following the flow of traffic, the gaps between the cars widened. Although Chi Yu's Audi was huge, he relied on his extremely keen awareness and exquisite control to charge left and right, finally killing his way out of the traffic and towards his destination. Xiao Lu sat in her car and watched Chi Yu's car gradually disappear from her sight. She couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. The appearance of Chi Yu when he gave the ring to Rue couldn't help but appear in her mind again. Who is this man? I've never heard of his existence in the upper class before. However, to be able to spend so much money at the charity auction, give such a precious ring to his beloved, and now drive a luxurious off-road vehicle, it was obvious that he was a successful person. For someone as young and rich as him, he should be very famous. Could it be that he is the child of a high-ranking official in the Yanhuang Republic? Shaking her head, Xiao Lu thought to herself, this is his business. What does it have to do with me? Moreover, a person like him can't be the type of person I like. What I like is the kind of person full of artistic sense. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of the days when she was studying in Italy. The artistic atmosphere there was what she appreciated the most. Driving about 3 kilometers east from the North 3rd Ring Road, Chi Yu drove down from the main road of the 3rd Ring Road, along the side road, found a bridge of the 3rd Ring Road, and went around the island. He felt that he was very close to his target. Following the guidance of his mental power, Chi Yu drove through the streets and alleys. When he drove in front of a 30-story office building, he finally stopped the car because his mental power told him that the target was on the 26th floor of this building. Judging from the aura, it should be a man. Unfortunately, there were too few plants in a city like Jing City. Otherwise, if there were plants around that person, he could even use his source of nature to see that person's appearance. The office building was obviously very high-end. It was called the Rambo International Conference Center. Chi Yu parked the car in the parking lot in front of the office building and walked into the office building. He didn't care about the luxurious decorations of the office building. He directly took the high-speed elevator and went straight to the 26th floor. As expected of a high-end office building, it only took him about 10 seconds. With a ding, the elevator had sent him to the office building. However, what made Chi Yu very depressed was that just when he reached the 26th floor, the door of the elevator next to him just happened to close. The other elevator door closing had nothing to do with him. However, his mental strength sensed that his target was in that elevator. In desperation, Chi Yu had to return to his elevator and press the button for the first floor. As the high-speed elevator descended, he soon returned to the first floor. However, when he came down from the elevator again, the door of the elevator next to him just happened to close again, and his target followed the elevator up again. F***CK, did he know that I was looking for him? Is he messing with me? Chi Yu snorted impatiently, looking at the number of the elevator next to him rising. He couldn't help but feel very dissatisfied. This time he wasn't in a hurry. Seeing that the elevator rose to the 26th floor and stopped, and didn't go down again, he slowly got into the elevator that he had just taken, ready to go to the 26th floor again.